What would you do if giving away your last dollar changed your entire life? When Ethan Parker handed an $18 bill to a desperate stranger at a rain-soaked bus stop, he had no idea that 24 hours later, 5 black SUVs would surround his crumbling apartment building. The woman he helped wasn't who she appeared to be. And the choice he made that cold November night, choosing compassion over survival, would unravel a conspiracy, expose a betrayal, and lead him into a world he never imagined existed. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of the downtown bus stop flickered like dying fireflies, casting erratic shadows across the cracked pavement. Ethan Parker sat hunched on the cold metal bench, his worn jacket doing little to shield him from the bitter November wind that cut through the deserted street. His hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the weight of the envelope in his pocket. $18. That was all that remained between him and absolute destitution. $18 to feed his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, for the next 3 days until his unemployment check might arrive. $18 that represented the mathematical difference between hopeful and hopeless. He'd counted the bills 17 times since leaving the grocery store, each count confirming what he already knew. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. The events of the past 72 hours played on an endless loop in his mind, a nightmare he couldn't wake from. Monday morning, he'd been a senior project coordinator at Meridian Construction, proud of the bridge project he'd spent 2 years developing. By Monday afternoon, he was unemployed, his reputation shattered by lies he couldn't defend against. Marcus Webb had orchestrated it perfectly. Ethan's former colleague, a man he'd considered a friend, had systematically planted evidence of cost overruns and material theft in Ethan's project files. When the auditors arrived, every trail led back to Ethan's digital signature, his authorization codes, his approval stamps. The fact that he'd been on vacation when half the transactions occurred didn't matter. The documentation was airtight, manufactured with the precision of someone who understood exactly how to destroy a career. "I'm sorry, Ethan," his supervisor had said, avoiding eye contact. "The evidence is overwhelming. We have to let you go immediately. You're lucky we're not pressing charges." Lucky. The word had echoed in his mind as security escorted him from the building, as his coworkers turned away as his phone began filling with messages from contacts suddenly too busy to talk. Marcus had covered his tracks beautifully, and Ethan knew why. The promotion to senior manager, the one Ethan had been promised, had gone to Marcus instead. Eliminating the competition wasn't just strategic, it was profitable. He'd tried fighting it, spent hours compiling his own evidence, proving he couldn't have authorized transactions from a beach in Florida. But lawyers cost money he didn't have, and Meridian's legal team made it clear that any lawsuit would be met with countercharges that would bankrupt him completely. The message was simple: walk away quietly or lose everything. So here he sat, 3 days later, with $18 and a daughter waiting at home who still believed her father could fix anything. "Daddy always finds a way," Lily had told Mrs. Chen, their neighbor, earlier that evening. The elderly woman had offered to watch Lily while Ethan went to the store, her kind eyes full of concern she tried to hide. She knew. Everyone in their building knew that Ethan was drowning. The bus stop's electronic display flickered. 11:47 p.m. The last bus heading toward the suburbs would arrive in 13 minutes. Ethan needed to be on it, needed to get back to Lily, needed to figure out how to stretch $18 into something that resembled hope. The sound of rapid footsteps broke his concentration. A woman emerged from the darkness of the adjacent alley, moving with the jerky urgency of someone fleeing. Her expensive coat was torn at the shoulder, her hair disheveled, mascara smeared beneath her eyes. She clutched a small purse against her chest like a lifeline, her breath coming in visible gasps in the cold air. She stumbled toward the bus stop, nearly falling as her heel caught on the uneven pavement. Ethan instinctively rose to steady her, but she flinched away, fear flashing across her face. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, raising his hands and stepping back. "I just thought you might fall." The woman studied him for a moment, her breathing still ragged. Up close, Ethan could see she was probably in her late 30s, with features that suggested she was accustomed to control and composure, neither of which she possessed at this moment. Her coat, despite being torn, was clearly expensive. Designer, the kind of thing that cost more than Ethan's monthly rent used to be. "Thank you," she finally managed, her voice shaky. "I'm fine. I just need to catch the bus." She moved to the bench and sat down hard, as if her legs had given out. Her hands trembled as she opened her purse and began frantically searching through it. Ethan returned to his spot on the opposite end of the bench, trying to give her space while keeping an eye out for whoever might have been chasing her. "No, no, no," the woman muttered, dumping the contents of her purse onto her lap. A lipstick rolled across the bench, a phone with a shattered screen, a few credit cards, and a pathetically small pile of coins that she began counting with increasing desperation. "Damn it!" She pressed her palms against her eyes, her shoulders beginning to shake. Ethan watched the coins scatter across her lap as her hands trembled. He counted them from where he sat, maybe $3 in quarters, dimes, and nickels. The bus fare to the suburbs was $7.50. He knew because he'd counted his own bus fare 3 times, separating it from the money meant for groceries. The electronic display updated, 11:49 p.m., 11 minutes. The woman was crying now, trying to hide it, her breath hitching as she pressed her fist against her mouth. Whatever had happened to her tonight had stripped away more than her composure. It had left her stranded, vulnerable, and alone at a bus stop in one of the city's least safe neighborhoods at midnight. Ethan's hand moved to his pocket, to the envelope containing $18. His survival for the next 3 days. Lily's meals, the buffer between managed poverty and absolute crisis. "This is insane," a voice in his head warned. "You can't afford this. You have a daughter depending on you. This woman is a stranger. She's not your responsibility." But Ethan was already moving, his hand pulling the envelope from his pocket before his rational mind could override the decision. "Excuse me," he said softly. The woman looked up, quickly wiping at her eyes. "I'm fine. I'll figure something out." "The bus fare is $7.50, Ethan said. He held out the envelope, extending it toward her. "This should be enough." She stared at the envelope like it was a foreign object. "I can't take your money." "Yes, you can." Ethan kept his hand extended, steady despite the trembling in his chest. "Whatever happened tonight, you need to get somewhere safe. Take it." "You don't understand," she started. "I understand that you're scared and you're stranded and the last bus is coming in 10 minutes. Ethan interrupted gently. "Everything else can wait until tomorrow. Take it, please." The woman's eyes filled with fresh tears. She looked down at the envelope, then back at Ethan's face, searching for something. Ulterior motives, perhaps, or conditions that would come with the gift. "I can pay you back," she said, her voice cracking. "I swear I can pay you back. Tomorrow. I just need a name, a number." "Don't worry about it." Ethan pressed the envelope into her hand before he could change his mind, before he could think about Lily's breakfast, or the empty refrigerator, or the fact that he'd just given away his last safety net to a complete stranger. The woman clutched the envelope, her knuckles white. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Ethan sat back down, suddenly exhausted. "Because someone should. Because if I were in your position, I'd hope someone would do the same. Because..." He trailed off, unable to articulate the real reason, that in this moment, helping someone else felt like the only thing he could control, the only choice that was purely his to make. "What's your name?" the woman asked, her voice steadier now. "Ethan. Ethan Parker." "Victoria," she said. She didn't offer a last name, and Ethan didn't ask. "I will pay you back, Ethan Parker. I promise you." In the distance, the rumble of the approaching bus grew louder. The headlights appeared at the end of the street, cutting through the darkness. Victoria stood, carefully gathering the scattered contents of her purse. She placed Ethan's envelope inside, then turned back to him. "How will I find you?" "Don't worry about it," Ethan repeated. "Just be safe." The bus pulled up with a hydraulic hiss, its doors opening. Victoria hesitated, looking between Ethan and the bus. Then, impulsively, she reached out and squeezed his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea what you've just done." Then she was gone, climbing the bus steps and disappearing into the lit interior. Ethan watched through the windows as she found a seat, watched as she pressed her face against the glass, and stared back at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Gratitude, certainly, but something else too. Something that looked almost like recognition. The bus pulled away, its taillights disappearing around the corner, and Ethan was alone again at the empty bus stop, with $0 in his pocket and no idea how he'd explain this to Lily. The walk home took 45 minutes. Ethan couldn't afford the bus fare anymore, so he moved through the cold November night on foot, his breath forming clouds in the air, his mind spinning through impossible calculations. He had exactly $0. His unemployment check wouldn't arrive for at least 3 more days, possibly 5 if there were processing delays. He had a daughter who would wake up hungry in 7 hours. The apartment building appeared like a ship in fog, 6 floors of weathered brick, with windows that rattled in the wind and stairs that groaned under weight. Home. For now. Until he missed another rent payment and joined the growing number of evicted tenants whose belongings appeared on the sidewalk with heartbreaking regularity. Mrs. Chen was waiting in the hallway outside his apartment, reading a paperback novel under the dim corridor light. She looked up as Ethan approached, her lined face creasing into a gentle smile. "She's asleep," Mrs. Chen said softly, standing with the careful movements of someone whose joints protested quick action. "Went down around 9. I made her some noodles for dinner. Don't worry, she ate well." Guilt crashed through Ethan. Mrs. Chen lived on a fixed income, barely more secure than his own situation, and she'd fed his daughter with food she could barely afford to share. "Mrs. Chen, you didn't have to—" "Hush," the elderly woman interrupted, patting his arm. "Lily is a good girl. She helps me with groceries, reads to me when my eyes are tired. We take care of each other. That's what neighbors do." She handed him his apartment key, which he'd left with her. "The grocery bags are on your counter. I saw you carrying them in earlier." Ethan had forgotten about the groceries, the pathetic collection of discount items he'd managed to afford before giving away his money. Ramen noodles, a loaf of bread, peanut butter, some bananas. Barely 3 days' worth of food, and now he had no buffer for emergencies. "Thank you," Ethan managed, "for everything." Mrs. Chen studied his face with the perception of someone who'd lived long enough to recognize when someone was drowning. "You're a good father, Ethan. Whatever's happening, don't forget that. Lily knows she's loved. That matters more than you think." She shuffled toward her own apartment, leaving Ethan alone in the hallway with his thoughts and his guilt, and the key to an apartment that felt more like a cage every day. Inside, the apartment was exactly as he'd left it, small, spare, showing the wear of too many tenants and too little maintenance. The living room doubled as his bedroom, his mattress folded against the wall during the day. Lily's room was barely large enough for her twin bed and a small dresser, but he'd painted it pink last year, before everything fell apart, and hung glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling that she loved. He checked on her now, easing open her door to see her small form curled under her favorite blanket, the one with the unicorns that was getting too small for her, but she refused to give up. Her dark hair spread across the pillow, her face peaceful in sleep. She looked so much like her mother in these quiet moments that Ethan's chest ached. Sarah had been gone for 4 years now, a car accident on a rainy highway, sudden and absolute. One moment Ethan had a wife, a partner, someone to share the weight of the world with. The next, he was a single father learning how to braid hair and navigate parent-teacher conferences and explain why mommy wasn't coming home. They'd survived it together, he and Lily. Built a new life from the wreckage of the old one. But now that life was crumbling too, and Ethan didn't know how to protect her from the collapse. He pulled her door closed gently and moved to the kitchen, staring at the grocery bags on the counter. The math was simple and devastating. 3 days of food, 5 days until his unemployment check. And if that check was delayed, or if it wasn't enough to cover rent and utilities and food. His phone buzzed, the sound jarring in the quiet apartment. Ethan pulled it from his pocket, expecting a spam call or another bill collector. Instead, it was a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Parker, this is Victoria from the bus stop. I need to see you tomorrow. It's urgent. Please meet me at the Starbucks on 5th and Madison at 9 a.m. I'll explain everything, and I'll pay you back with interest. Please come. VH." Ethan stared at the message, reading it 3 times. How had she gotten his number? He hadn't given it to her. The Starbucks on 5th and Madison was in the financial district, at least an hour's walk from his apartment. And 9 a.m. was tight. He'd need to get Lily to school first, which meant rushing through their morning routine, but the promise of being paid back, with interest, was impossible to ignore. $18 suddenly becoming 20 or 30, or whatever she considered appropriate interest could mean the difference between making it to his unemployment check and complete disaster. He texted back, "I'll be there." The response came immediately, "Thank you. You won't regret this." Ethan wasn't sure he believed that, but he was too tired to analyze it further. He moved through his evening routine on autopilot, checking that the door was locked, setting out Lily's clothes for tomorrow, preparing her lunch with the limited supplies he had. Then he unfolded his mattress, lay down in the darkness, and stared at the ceiling. Sleep didn't come easy. His mind spun through scenarios, each more unlikely than the last. Who was Victoria? How had she gotten his number? What could be so urgent that she needed to meet him the very next day? And beneath all those questions lurked a deeper fear. What if this was some kind of elaborate scam? What if he showed up tomorrow and found himself in even worse trouble than he was already in? But what choice did he have? $18 wasn't coming back on its own. And if there was even a chance that this meeting could lead to something positive, a job lead, a connection, anything that might help him climb out of this hole, he had to take it. The clock on the microwave glowed 2:47 a.m. when Ethan finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, his dreams full of bus stops and black envelopes and a woman's face pressed against glass, staring back at him with an expression he still couldn't name. Morning arrived too quickly. Lily's alarm went off at 6:30, her cheerful pop music jarring Ethan from the thin sleep he'd managed. He heard her padding around her room, talking to her stuffed animals as she got dressed, and forced himself to stand, to fold away his mattress, to become the functional parent she needed him to be. "Morning, Ladybug," he called through her door. "Morning, Daddy." She emerged already dressed in the outfit he'd laid out, jeans and her favorite purple sweater. Her hair was a tangled mess, but her smile was radiant. "Mrs. Chen made really good noodles last night. Can we have them again?" "Maybe," Ethan said, guilt twisting in his stomach. "Come here, let me do your hair." They had a routine for this, Lily sitting on the kitchen counter while Ethan worked through the tangles with careful patience, eventually braiding her hair into two plaits that she insisted made her look like a character from her favorite book. It was one of the few things he'd gotten genuinely good at in the 4 years since Sarah died. "Daddy?" Lily asked as he tied off the second braid. "Are you okay?" The question caught him off guard. "Of course, Ladybug. Why?" "You have your worry face on, the one where your eyebrows get all scrunched." She demonstrated, creating an exaggerated frown that made him smile despite everything. "I'm fine," he lied. "Just thinking about some grown-up stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." "Mrs. Chen says worry is just love with nowhere to go," Lily said matter-of-factly. "So if you're worried, that means you love something, and you should tell it where to go so it can help." Ethan paused, the simple wisdom of it striking him. "Mrs. Chen is very smart. She's teaching me Chinese words too. Do you want to hear? Ni hao means hello, and xie xie means thank you, and that's wonderful, Ladybug. You can teach me more at dinner, okay? Right now we need to eat breakfast and get you to school." Breakfast was peanut butter on bread and a banana split between them. Lily chattered about her upcoming math test and the art project they were working on in class, something about fall leaves and watercolors. Ethan tried to focus, tried to be present, but part of his mind was already at the Starbucks on 5th and Madison, wondering what waited for him there. The walk to Lily's elementary school took 15 minutes. Ethan held her hand as they navigated the morning sidewalk traffic, steering her around puddles left by last night's rain. Other parents passed them, some in business suits heading to office jobs, others in workout clothes returning from the gym. Their lives seemed so normal, so stable, and Ethan felt like a ghost moving among them, invisible in his dysfunction. "Have a great day, Ladybug," he said as they reached the school gates. "I'll pick you up at 3, okay?" "Okay." Lily hugged him tight, her small arms fierce around his waist. "Love you, Daddy. Love you too, more than all the stars." "And all the planets," she finished, their ritual complete. Then she was running toward the building, her backpack bouncing, joining the stream of children flowing through the doors. Ethan watched until she disappeared inside, then turned toward downtown. The walk to Fifth and Madison would take close to an hour at a brisk pace. He started moving, the morning air cold enough to make his eyes water. The city transformed as he walked, the residential streets giving way to commercial zones, then to the gleaming towers of the financial district. He'd been in this part of the city before, back when he had the Meridian job, attending meetings in buildings that seemed to touch the clouds. Now he felt like an intruder, his worn jacket and scuffed shoes marking him as someone who didn't belong among the pressed suits and polished shoes. The Starbucks appeared at 8:52 a.m., a corner location with floor-to-ceiling windows and the kind of sophisticated design that suggested the coffee cost more than Ethan could afford. He hesitated outside, suddenly unsure. What if Victoria didn't show? What if this was all some kind of mistake? Then he saw her through the window, sitting at a corner table, looking nothing like the desperate woman from the bus stop. Victoria wore a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek style, her makeup flawless. She looked powerful, composed, completely in control, and when she saw him through the window, her face lit up with unmistakable relief. She stood as he entered, waving him over. "Ethan, thank you for coming." Up close, she looked even more polished than through the window, but Ethan could see traces of last night in her eyes, shadows that spoke of a sleepless night, a tension in her jaw that suggested stress despite the confident exterior. "Please sit," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. On the table sat 2 coffee cups and what looked like a bag of pastries. "I ordered you a coffee, black, right? I figured, well, I guessed. If I'm wrong, I can get you something else." "Black is fine," Ethan said, sitting down carefully. The chair was more comfortable than anything in his apartment. "Victoria, what's going on? How did you get my number?" She smiled faintly. "I have resources. But before we get into that, I need to apologize for last night, for not being entirely truthful about who I am." "Who are you?" Victoria reached into her bag and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. Ethan picked it up, reading the embossed text. Victoria Hale, Chief Executive Officer, Hale Industries. The name meant nothing to him initially. Then recognition clicked into place. Hale Industries, a manufacturing conglomerate that supplied components for construction, aerospace, and technology firms. One of the largest privately held companies in the state. He'd seen their name on supply chains at Meridian. "You're," Ethan started, unable to finish the sentence. "Rich, yes, powerful, supposedly, and last night I was robbed, drugged, and left stranded by someone I trusted." Victoria's voice hardened on the last word. "Someone inside my own company set me up, Ethan. They took my phone, my wallet, my security details, contact information. They left me with nothing, probably hoping I'd make a mistake that would compromise me or the company." Ethan set down the coffee cup he'd just picked up. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you helped me when I had nothing. When I was nobody. You didn't know who I was or what I could offer you. You just saw someone who needed help, and you gave everything you had." Victoria leaned forward, her intensity palpable. "Do you have any idea how rare that is? Especially in my world?" "I just gave you bus fare," Ethan said, uncomfortable with the weight she was placing on his action. "You gave me your last $18, Victoria corrected. "I checked. The envelope had your grocery receipt in it. You spent your last money on bare essentials and then you gave it all to a stranger." Ethan felt heat rise to his face. "You went through my things?" "I needed to know who you were. I needed to understand if this was real or if there was an angle I was missing." Victoria pulled out another envelope, this one thick with bills, and set it on the table. "There's $5,000 in there, $1,000 for every dollar you gave me. And before you refuse it, that's not why I asked you here." Ethan stared at the envelope like it might explode. $5,000. Enough to cover rent for 3 months. Enough to buy groceries and pay down his credit cards and maybe start building something that resembled stability. "I can't accept this," he heard himself say. "Yes, you can. And you will, because you have a daughter who needs food and a roof over her head, and pride is a luxury you can't afford right now." Victoria's tone was matter-of-fact, not unkind. "But I didn't ask you here to give you money, Ethan. I asked you here because I need your help." "My help? I'm unemployed. You're someone I can trust, Victoria interrupted. Someone who proved they'll do the right thing even when it costs them everything. I need that right now. I need someone outside my usual circles, someone with no ties to the company, someone who can help me figure out who betrayed me before they strike again. Ethan leaned back, his head spinning. This couldn't be real. 24 hours ago, he was giving away his last dollars at a bus stop. Now a CEO was asking for his help with corporate espionage? I'm not a detective, he said. I'm not even an employed project coordinator anymore. Tell me what happened, Victoria said. Why you lost your job? So Ethan told her. About Marcus Webb, about the fabricated evidence, about the bridge project and the audit and the security escort from the building. He kept his voice level, trying to present the facts without the emotion that still roiled beneath them. Victoria listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker as the story unfolded. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You were set up, she finally said, systematically destroyed to benefit someone else's ambition. Yes. And you didn't fight back. I couldn't afford to. The legal fees alone would have bankrupted me, and Meridian made it clear they'd countersue if I tried. Victoria nodded slowly. What if I told you that Meridian Construction is one of Hale Industries' largest clients? What if I told you that I could make one phone call and have their entire legal department reviewing your case by this afternoon? Ethan's breath caught. Why would you do that? Because what happened to you is exactly what happened to me last night. Betrayal by someone you trusted in a system designed to protect the powerful. Because I believe you, and I believe Marcus Webb deserves to face consequences. Victoria paused. And because I need you to believe that when I offer you a job, it's not charity. It's a genuine offer based on your skills and your character. A job, Ethan repeated. Special consultant to the CEO. You'll help me investigate the security breach, identify who's working against me inside the company, and help me root out the corruption before it spreads further. The pay is $120,000 a year, with benefits starting immediately. Victoria pulled out another document, a formal offer letter. You can start today if you want, or take time to think about it. But Ethan, I'm serious. I need someone I can trust, and right now you're the only person who fits that description. Ethan picked up the offer letter, scanning the details. It was real. The salary, the benefits, the job description, all of it spelled out in crisp legal language. $120,000. More than twice what he'd made at Meridian. Enough to not just survive, but to actually build a life for Lily. I don't understand, he said. You don't know anything about me except that I gave you bus fare. I know more than you think. I had my people run a background check. Don't look at me like that. It's standard procedure. I know you graduated top of your class in engineering. I know your project reviews at Meridian were exemplary until suddenly they weren't. I know you've been a single father for 4 years and that every teacher at your daughter's school raves about both of you. I know you pay your rent on time, volunteer at the food bank when you can, and that Mrs. Chen in your building thinks you're the best neighbor she's ever had. Victoria smiled slightly. I know that you're exactly the kind of person I need right now. Ethan looked down at the envelope of money, then at the offer letter, then back at Victoria's face. She meant it, all of it. This wasn't a dream or a scam. It was real. There has to be a catch, he said. The catch is that someone inside my company wants me destroyed, and helping me puts you in their crosshairs too. The catch is that this job might be dangerous, not just professionally, but potentially physically. The catch is that you'll be working directly with me, which means irregular hours and high stress and constant uncertainty. Victoria's expression softened. But the catch is also that you'll finally have the resources to fight back against what Marcus Webb did to you. You'll have stability for your daughter. You'll have a chance to prove that you're exactly as good as you know you are. Ethan thought about Lily, waiting at school for him to pick her up, about Mrs. Chen feeding his daughter because he couldn't afford to, about the empty refrigerator and the impossible math of making nothing stretch into something. He thought about the bus stop last night, about the choice he'd made to help someone who needed it more than he did in that moment. And he thought about Victoria's words. You gave everything you had to a stranger. Maybe it was time to take a chance on himself the way he'd taken a chance on her. When do I start? Ethan asked. Victoria's smile transformed her entire face. Right now, if you're ready. We have a lot of work to do and not much time to do it. She stood, extending her hand. Ethan stood too, shaking it firmly. Her grip was strong, confident, and when their eyes met, he saw the same determination he felt rising in his own chest. One condition, Ethan said. I need to pick up my daughter from school at 3, no matter what. Done. Family comes first, always. Victoria released his hand and gestured toward the door. My car is outside. Let's go change your life. As they walked out of the Starbucks into the bright morning sunshine, Ethan felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Real, tangible hope that maybe, just maybe, the choice he'd made at that bus stop would prove to be the best decision of his life. He had no idea how right he was, or how dramatically the next 24 hours would reshape everything he thought he knew about trust, betrayal, and the strange mathematics of kindness repaid. But he was about to find out. The black SUV waiting outside the Starbucks was unlike anything Ethan had ever ridden in. The interior smelled of leather and expensive cologne. And when Victoria's driver, a stern-looking man named Richard, who nodded curtly at Ethan, pulled into traffic, the ride was so smooth it felt like floating. Ethan sat beside Victoria in the back seat, still clutching the envelope of money she'd given him, trying to process the surreal turn his life had taken in the space of 12 hours. We're heading to my private office, Victoria explained, scrolling through messages on a new phone. Apparently, she'd already replaced everything stolen the night before. Not the main Hale Industries building. Somewhere more secure. Somewhere whoever set me up last night won't expect me to be. How many people know what happened to you? Ethan asked. Too many and not enough. Victoria's jaw tightened. My head of security, Marcus, not your Marcus, different person, found me this morning after I didn't check in. I told him the basics, but I haven't revealed to anyone that I suspect an inside job. As far as my company knows, I was mugged by random street criminals. I want to keep it that way until we know who we can trust. The SUV navigated through downtown traffic with practiced efficiency, eventually pulling into an underground parking garage beneath a nondescript office building in the financial district. Richard guided the vehicle into a private space, then came around to open Victoria's door with military precision. Thank you, Richard, Victoria said. We'll be upstairs for several hours. Standard protocols. Yes, ma'am. Richard's eyes flicked to Ethan with an assessing look that suggested he could probably break Ethan in half if necessary. Then he returned to the driver's seat to wait. Victoria led Ethan to a private elevator that required both a key card and a fingerprint scan to activate. As they ascended, she turned to him with an expression that was part apology, part warning. What you're about to see stays between us. Understood? Understood, Ethan agreed, though he had no idea what he was agreeing to. The elevator opened directly into a spacious office that occupied the entire top floor of the building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, but what caught Ethan's attention was the wall of monitors displaying what appeared to be security feeds, financial data, and news streams from around the world. This is my crisis center, Victoria explained, moving to a large desk dominated by 3 computer screens. When things go wrong, and in my business they frequently do, this is where I manage the damage. Welcome to the place where I actually run Hale Industries. Ethan moved closer to the monitors, recognizing some of the feeds. Manufacturing facilities, shipping yards, executive offices. This is a lot of surveillance. This is what's necessary to run a billion-dollar company in a world full of people who want to take it from you. Victoria sat down at her desk, her fingers already flying across a keyboard. Last night wasn't just a robbery, Ethan. It was a coordinated attack designed to compromise me at a very specific time. She pulled up a calendar on the center monitor, highlighting tomorrow's date. In exactly 36 hours, I'm scheduled to finalize a merger with Donovan Technologies. It's a deal I've been negotiating for 18 months. A merger that will double Hale Industries' valuation and position us as the dominant supplier in 3 major markets. The paperwork is done, the contracts are written, and all that remains is my signature alongside Nathan Donovan's. And someone doesn't want that to happen, Ethan said, understanding beginning to dawn. Someone desperately doesn't want that to happen. The question is who and why. Victoria opened another window, displaying a series of photographs, executive portraits of serious-looking men and women in business attire. These are my senior leadership team, 8 people who have access to my schedule, my security protocols, and my personal information. One of them set me up last night. Ethan studied the faces on the screen. They all looked competent, professional, entirely trustworthy, which meant absolutely nothing. "Walk me through what happened," he said. "Everything, from the beginning." Victoria leaned back in her chair, her eyes distant as she recalled the previous evening. "I had a dinner meeting with James Chen, my chief financial officer." She pointed to one of the photographs, an Asian man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and a slight smile. "We were supposed to discuss final budget allocations for the Donovan merger. The restaurant was the Sterling Room, one of my regular places. James suggested it." "He chose the location?" "Yes, which isn't unusual. James handles a lot of my scheduling." Victoria pulled up email records showing a chain of messages between her and Chen. "The dinner went normally at first. We discussed numbers, projections, risk assessments. Then James ordered us both scotch to celebrate. The restaurant knows my preferences. 18-year Macallan, neat. James toasted to our success, we drank, and that's when things started getting strange." "The scotch was drugged," Ethan said. "I didn't realize it at the time, but yes, within 20 minutes I felt disoriented, fuzzy. James insisted on walking me to my car, said I seemed unwell. I remember getting into the back of what I thought was my town car, but the driver wasn't Richard. I tried to object, tried to reach for my phone, but everything was moving so slowly. The last thing I remember clearly is the driver turning around, and it wasn't anyone I recognized." Victoria's hands clenched on the desk. "When I came to, I was in an alley about 3 miles from the restaurant. My phone was gone, my wallet was gone, even my security panic button was taken. They left me just enough, those few dollars in change, my torn coat, to look like a random mugging victim. But they were careful not to hurt me physically. No bruises, no cuts. This wasn't about violence, it was about isolation and humiliation." "They wanted you to be found in that state," Ethan said slowly, working through the logic. "Disheveled, disoriented, possibly still showing signs of drugs in your system. If you'd gone to a hospital or police station, the story would be everywhere by morning. Billionaire CEO found drugged in alley. Questions about my judgment, my stability, my fitness to lead the company. The Donovan merger would be thrown into doubt, possibly collapse entirely. Nathan Donovan is risk-averse. Any hint of scandal could spook him into backing out." Victoria's voice hardened. "It was a professional hit job designed to destroy my credibility without laying a finger on me." Ethan moved to the windows, looking out over the city as he processed the information. Somewhere down there, in the tangle of streets and buildings, was the alley where Victoria had woken up. Not far from there was the bus stop where their paths had crossed. The randomness of it all was staggering, and yet maybe it wasn't random at all. "You took the bus to escape," he said. "They probably expected you to call someone from your company for help or go to the police. Instead, you stayed off the grid." Survival instinct kicked in. I knew something was wrong, knew I'd been compromised, but I was too disoriented to know who to trust. So I ran. Victoria stood, joining him at the window. "If you hadn't been at that bus stop, if you hadn't helped me, I might have made a mistake, called the wrong person, exposed myself to whoever orchestrated this. You bought me time to think clearly." $18 worth of time, Ethan said with a slight smile. "The best investment I've ever made." Victoria turned to face him directly. "Now I need you to help me figure out who did this. James Chen is the obvious suspect. He was there, he had access, he could have coordinated everything. But I've known James for 12 years. He's been loyal, trustworthy, brilliant at his job. I can't believe he'd betray me without a compelling reason." "Money's usually a compelling reason," Ethan pointed out. "James is already wealthy. I pay my senior team extremely well, and he has stock options worth millions. Unless someone offered him something I can't match." Victoria trailed off, then pulled up financial records on her screens. "This is where I need your fresh perspective. You're not embedded in company politics. You don't have preconceptions about these people. Look at this data and tell me what you see." For the next 3 hours, Ethan immersed himself in the complex world of Hale Industries' finances. Victoria guided him through the basics, the company's various divisions, their revenue streams, their major contracts and clients. But she also showed him the anomalies she'd noticed over the past 6 months, small irregularities that individually meant nothing but collectively suggested something was off. These shipping manifests don't match the inventory records, Ethan said, highlighting a discrepancy in the aerospace division's reports. You're showing deliveries of titanium components that never appear in the final accounting. I noticed that too, Victoria confirmed. Could be clerical errors, or it could be someone skimming materials to sell on the side. How much money are we talking about? At current market prices? Maybe $3 million over 6 months. Significant, but not enough to destroy a company this size. However, Victoria pulled up another set of records. If someone was systematically stealing from multiple divisions, the total could be substantially higher. Ethan leaned closer to the screen, his engineering background kicking in. At Meridian, he'd been responsible for tracking materials and costs across major projects. He knew how to spot the patterns that indicated either honest mistakes or deliberate fraud. Pull up your construction materials division, he said, and cross-reference it with client billing records for the past year. Victoria's fingers flew across the keyboard, generating the comparison Ethan requested. When the data populated, they both fell silent, staring at the obvious pattern. Someone's billing clients for premium materials and delivering standard grade, Ethan said quietly. The markup difference is being pocketed, and the clients probably don't even know they're being cheated because the materials still meet minimum specifications. That's not $3 million, Victoria said, her voice tight. That's closer to $20 million, maybe more. And if the Donovan merger went through, your combined audit systems would probably catch it within the first quarter. Ethan sat back, the pieces falling into place. Whoever's running this scheme needs to either stop the merger or remove you before the truth comes out. Victoria was already pulling up personnel files. Who has the authority to authorize material substitutions across multiple divisions? They worked together, Victoria providing institutional knowledge while Ethan applied analytical rigor unconstrained by corporate politics. The list of suspects narrowed quickly. Most senior executives had authority only within their own divisions. Cross-division authorization required either Victoria's direct approval or sign-off from one of 3 people. James Chen as CFO, Linda Marsh as Chief Operating Officer, or David Sterling as Senior Vice President of Supply Chain. Linda's been with the company for 20 years, Victoria said, pulling up Marsh's file. She started as a floor manager and worked her way up. I trust her completely. With respect, you trusted James Chen too, Ethan pointed out gently. We can't eliminate anyone based on history. We need evidence. Victoria's expression flickered with something that might have been pain, but she nodded. You're right. Okay, let's look at all 3 objectively. They spread the financial data across multiple screens, color-coding transactions by authorization signature. A pattern emerged slowly, like a photograph developing in a darkroom. The material substitutions started small 8 months ago, always authorized through different channels to avoid obvious patterns. But when Ethan mapped them geographically and chronologically, they told a clear story. It's David Sterling, Ethan said, highlighting the evidence trail. Look, every single substitution originates from a facility under his direct oversight. He's using his supply chain authority to approve the switches. Then he's routing the billing through James's systems to make it look like normal accounting. James probably doesn't even know it's happening because the transactions appear legitimate in isolation. Victoria studied the data, her expression growing darker. David joined the company 4 years ago, came highly recommended from a competitor. His performance has been exceptional. He reduced our supply chain costs by 15% in his first year. By cutting corners you didn't authorize, Ethan said. He's been stealing from you for months, maybe longer. And when you announced the Donovan merger, he knew his scheme had an expiration date. So he tried to remove me from the equation. Victoria's hands curled into fists. The dinner, the drugs, the staged mugging, all of it to discredit me and derail the merger long enough for him to cover his tracks. Or to position himself as a hero who stabilizes the company in your absence, Ethan added. If you'd been found in that alley by police, if the story had gone public, who would the board of directors turn to for interim leadership? Victoria's eyes widened. David's next in line. He's well-liked, respected, and he's been positioning himself as my potential successor for months. I thought it was normal ambition. I didn't realize. She she was interrupted by her phone buzzing. Victoria glanced at the screen, and her expression shifted from anger to something more calculated. "It's David," she said. "He wants to schedule an emergency meeting about security concerns following my mugging last night. He's offering to coordinate with police and media to manage the situation." "He's trying to control the narrative," Ethan said, "making sure the story gets told his way." Victoria typed out a response, her fingers steady despite the fury Ethan could see in her eyes. "I'm telling him I appreciate his concern, but I'm handling it privately through my personal security team. That should buy us some time." "Time for what?" "To gather evidence that will stand up in court. What we have now is compelling, but it's circumstantial. We need something concrete, documents, communications, maybe witness testimony from people working in his division who noticed the discrepancies." Victoria stood, pacing to the windows. "We need to move carefully. David has 4 years of institutional knowledge and loyalty from his team. If we accuse him without ironclad proof, he could turn it back on us." Ethan thought about his own experience with Marcus Webb at Meridian. The fabricated evidence, the impossible position of defending himself against lies that looked like truth. Victoria was right. They couldn't make the same mistake Sterling had made with her, attacking without certainty. "What if we set a trap?" he suggested. Victoria turned to face him. "What kind of trap?" "Sterling thinks you're compromised and isolated. He doesn't know you've figured out his scheme. What if we use that?" Ethan moved to the desk, thinking out loud. "You said the Donovan merger finalizes tomorrow. What if you let Sterling think you're too shaken up to attend? Give him an opportunity to either sabotage the meeting or make a move that exposes his real intentions." "He'd step in to save the merger on my behalf," Victoria said slowly, following the logic. "And in doing so, he'd have to communicate with his co-conspirators or take actions that reveal the full scope of his operation." Exactly. We monitor everything, his emails, his calls, his movements, give him enough rope to hang himself." Victoria considered this, her strategic mind clearly running through scenarios and risks. "It's dangerous. If something goes wrong, the Donovan merger actually could collapse. That's not just my company at risk. It's thousands of jobs, supplier contracts, investor confidence." "But if Sterling gets away with this, the risk is even greater," Ethan countered. "He'll keep stealing, keep undermining the company from within, and next time he needs to remove an obstacle, the attack might be more than just professional." The weight of that hung between them. Victoria had been lucky last night, drugged and abandoned, but ultimately unharmed. There was no guarantee Sterling would be so restrained if he felt cornered. "All right," Victoria decided, "we'll do it, but I need you with me every step of the way. I meant what I said this morning. You're the only person I trust right now." "What about your head of security? Marcus, you said his name was?" "Marcus is loyal, but he's trained to protect me physically, not to navigate corporate espionage. I need someone who understands how business fraud works, how evidence is manufactured and concealed." Victoria met his eyes. "I need someone who's been on the receiving end of this kind of betrayal and survived it." Ethan felt the parallel she was drawing. His experience with Marcus Webb made him uniquely qualified to anticipate Sterling's moves. It was strange finding value in what had been the worst experience of his professional life, but Victoria was right. He understood the playbook because he'd been destroyed by it. "Okay," he said. "Tell me exactly what you need me to do." They spent the next 2 hours constructing an elaborate performance. Victoria would send carefully worded messages to her senior team, including Sterling, indicating that last night's incident had left her emotionally shaken and physically exhausted. She'd suggest that David take the lead on tomorrow's Donovan merger meeting while she recovered. Meanwhile, Victoria would activate surveillance on Sterling's communications and movements, tracking everything he did in the next 36 hours. "The key is making him feel safe," Victoria explained as she drafted an email to Sterling. "He needs to believe I'm exactly where he wanted me, compromised, uncertain, willing to lean on him for support." "Won't your other executives think it's strange?" Ethan asked. "You don't strike me as someone who backs down from important meetings. Which is why I'm also telling them that my doctor advised rest after the mugging. Medical cover provides plausible deniability." Victoria showed him the message before sending it, and Ethan had to admire the careful balance, vulnerable enough to seem genuine, but not so weak as to raise questions about her fitness to lead. The responses came quickly. James Chen expressed concern and offered to coordinate with David on the merger meeting. Linda Marsh sent a personal note encouraging Victoria to take all the time she needed. And David Sterling responded with exactly the kind of message that confirmed their suspicions. "I'm so sorry this happened to you, Victoria. Please don't worry about the Donovan meeting. I'll handle everything personally and make sure Nathan knows you're simply taking necessary precautions after last night's incident. You've worked too hard on this deal to let random criminals derail it. Trust me to represent your interests tomorrow. We'll make you proud." "Trust me," Victoria read aloud, her voice dripping with irony. "He's not even subtle about it." "He doesn't think he needs to be," Ethan said. "As far as he knows, you have no idea he's behind last night. He's the helpful deputy stepping up when the boss is down." Victoria forwarded Sterling's message to her private security team with instructions to monitor all his communications and movements for the next 48 hours. Then she turned to Ethan with an expression that was equal parts determination and exhaustion. "This is going to be a long night," she said. "Sterling will probably make his moves after business hours when he thinks no one's watching. I need to be here monitoring the surveillance, ready to respond to whatever he does." Ethan glanced at his watch. It was nearly 2:30 p.m. In 30 minutes, he needed to pick up Lily from school. The timing was impossible, but he'd made a promise to his daughter, and he'd also made a promise to Victoria about his priorities. "I need to get my daughter," he said. "But I can come back tonight after I get her settled with a neighbor." "Bring her here," Victoria said immediately. "I have a full apartment on the floor below this office, bedroom, kitchen, entertainment system. She can do homework, watch TV, whatever she needs. I'll order dinner for all of us. Your daughter shouldn't have to be shuffled around because of this situation." Ethan hesitated, torn between gratitude and concern. "Victoria, this is corporate espionage we're dealing with. I don't want Lily anywhere near—" "This building is more secure than most government facilities," Victoria interrupted gently. "Richard's downstairs. I have a full security team on call, and this floor requires biometric access. Your daughter will be safer here than almost anywhere else in the city. And more importantly, you'll be able to focus on the work because you'll know she's taken care of." The offer was almost overwhelming. Yesterday, Ethan had been counting his last dollars and wondering how to feed Lily for 3 days. Today, a billionaire was offering to provide dinner and security for his daughter, while he helped investigate corporate fraud. The whiplash of it was dizzying. "Thank you," he managed. "That would be—" "Thank you." Victoria smiled, a genuine expression that softened her executive demeanor. "You gave me everything you had when I was a stranger at a bus stop. The least I can do is order pizza and make sure your daughter's homework gets done." They took the elevator down to the residential floor, where Victoria showed Ethan an apartment that was more luxurious than anywhere he'd ever lived. The living room alone was larger than his entire current place, with comfortable furniture and a television that looked like it belonged in a movie theater. "Make yourselves at home," Victoria said. "There's a fully stocked kitchen. Help yourself to anything. The bedroom's through there if Lily needs to nap. And if you need me, just call. I'll be upstairs in the office." Ethan checked his watch again. "I need to go get her now, or I'll be late." "Richard will drive you," Victoria offered, but Ethan shook his head. "I'll take the bus. It'll give me time to think, and Lily's used to our routine. I don't want to overwhelm her with too many changes at once." Victoria studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I understand, but take this." She pressed a credit card into his hand. "Company card for any expenses." "And Ethan, thank you for trusting me with your daughter. I know that's not a small thing." The bus ride to Lily's school gave Ethan exactly what he needed, 40 minutes of relative quiet to process the surreal day. He'd gone from unemployed and desperate to employed and entangled in a corporate conspiracy. He had $5,000 in his pocket and a job that paid more than he'd ever imagined earning. And he had Victoria Hale's trust, which felt both empowering and terrifying in equal measure. Lily was waiting at the school gates with her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, who waved as Ethan approached. "Hi, Mr. Parker. Lily did wonderful on her math test today." "I got an A," Lily announced proudly, bouncing on her toes. "Can we celebrate with ice cream?" Ethan thought about the credit card in his pocket, the money in his envelope. The sudden abundance after months of scarcity. Yeah, Ladybug. We can get ice cream. And then I need to tell you about some changes. They stopped at a small ice cream shop near the bus stop, and over chocolate cones, Ethan explained in 7-year-old terms that Daddy had gotten a new job helping a very nice lady with some important work. They were going to spend the evening at her office, which had a really cool apartment with a big TV and probably better snacks than they had at home. Is the nice lady your boss now? Lily asked, chocolate smeared on her chin. Yes, she is. Is she nice to you? Because Mr. Webb wasn't nice to you at your old job, and that made you sad. The perceptiveness of children never failed to amaze Ethan. He'd tried so hard to hide his stress from Lily, but she'd noticed anyway, filing away her father's sadness like a small wound she couldn't heal. She's very nice, Ethan assured her. And this job is going to be much better. We're going to be okay, Ladybug. Things are going to get better. Lily grinned, her earlier concern forgotten in the simple faith children have that their parents can fix anything. Good. Can I bring my homework to the nice lady's office? Mrs. Patterson said I need to practice my spelling words. Absolutely. We'll make a whole evening of it. The return trip took them to Victoria's building, where Richard was waiting in the parking garage, as if he'd somehow known exactly when they'd arrive. He nodded to Ethan, then smiled at Lily, a surprising expression on the normally stern man's face. You must be Miss Lily, Richard said. Your father's told Ms. Hale a lot about you. He has? Lily looked up at Ethan with surprise. I mentioned you might be visiting, Ethan clarified, shooting Richard a grateful look for making Lily feel expected rather than tolerated. The elevator ride up to the residential floor had Lily chattering about her day. The math test, the art project, a funny thing her friend Emma had said at lunch. Normal, everyday childhood moments that felt precious against the backdrop of corporate conspiracies and elaborate traps. When the elevator doors opened, Victoria was waiting in the apartment, having somehow changed out of her business suit into casual slacks and a sweater that made her look more approachable. You must be Lily, Victoria said, crouching down to be at eye level with her. I'm Victoria. Your dad's going to be helping me with some work tonight, and I thought you might like to hang out here while we're busy. I've got a pretty good TV, and I ordered some pizza. Pepperoni, okay? Lily looked at Ethan for permission, and when he nodded, she turned back to Victoria with a shy smile. Pepperoni's my favorite. Thank you for letting us visit your office. You're very welcome. And this, Victoria gestured around the apartment, is all yours for the evening. Think of it as your own special space. Over the next hour, Victoria proved herself unexpectedly good with children. She helped Lily set up her homework at the dining table, asked intelligent questions about the spelling words she was practicing, and even sat through a detailed explanation of Lily's art project about fall leaves. Watching them together, Ethan felt something shift in his perception of Victoria. She wasn't just a powerful CEO, she was a person capable of genuine warmth and connection. When the pizza arrived, they ate together, the three of them sharing a meal that felt strangely like something a family might do. Lily talked about wanting to try soccer next year, and Victoria encouraged her, mentioning that she'd played in college. Ethan watched the easy rapport developing between them and felt a flutter of something he couldn't quite name. Gratitude, certainly, but also something deeper and more complex. After dinner, Victoria showed Lily how to work the entertainment system, queuing up a movie that would keep her occupied for a couple of hours. Then she and Ethan headed upstairs to the office, leaving Lily content with her film and a promise that they'd check on her regularly. Back in the crisis center, the monitors showed a very different kind of evening entertainment. Victoria pulled up the surveillance feeds on David Sterling, and what they saw confirmed every suspicion. Sterling had left the office at exactly 5:00 p.m., making a show of stopping by several departments to check on his team and wish them a good evening. But instead of going home, he'd driven to a restaurant in a part of town known for its discretion and private dining rooms. The surveillance team had identified his companion, Nathan Donovan's chief technology officer, Richard Wu. That's interesting, Victoria murmured, watching the feed. Nathan's CTO meeting privately with my SVP of supply chain the night before our merger finalizes. Could be innocent, Ethan suggested, though he didn't believe it. Could be. But look at Sterling's body language. Victoria zoomed in on the video. Sterling was leaning forward, speaking intently, his expression serious. Wu looked uncomfortable, glancing around the restaurant as if worried about being observed. Victoria activated the audio feed. Apparently her surveillance team had managed to plant a listening device, and Sterling's voice came through clear and urgent. Understand that this is difficult, Richard, but you need to trust me. Victoria's not stable right now. Last night's incident was just the tip of the iceberg. There are financial irregularities she's been trying to hide, and I'm concerned that moving forward with the merger could expose Donovan Technologies to significant liability. That's insane, Ethan breathed. He's trying to sabotage the merger by planting doubts with Donovan's team. Shh, listen, Victoria commanded. Wu's voice responded, sounding uncertain. I don't know, David. Nathan's been confident in Victoria's leadership throughout this process. To suddenly raise concerns now... I'm not asking you to sabotage anything, Sterling interrupted smoothly. I'm asking you to be prudent. Suggest to Nathan that maybe we delay the signing by a week, just to ensure Victoria's fully recovered and mentally prepared for such a significant commitment. It's the responsible thing to do. There was a pause, then Wu said, and if Nathan asks why I'm suddenly concerned, tell him you've heard rumors. That's all it takes. Just plant the seed of doubt. Nathan's risk-averse by nature. He'll want to be cautious, especially with this much money on the line. The conversation continued, Sterling weaving an intricate web of half-truths and careful suggestions, never quite lying, but creating an impression of instability and risk around Victoria. By the time they finished their dinner, Wu looked thoroughly convinced that delaying the merger was the wise conservative choice. Victoria turned off the feed, her expression controlled fury. He's good, I'll give him that. He's not making direct accusations, not leaving any evidence that could be used against him. He's just a concerned executive, looking out for the company's best interests. But he's also communicating with Donovan's team without your knowledge, Ethan pointed out. That has to be some kind of violation of corporate protocols. It's inappropriate, but not necessarily illegal. Senior executives talk to their counterparts at partner companies all the time. Victoria pulled up another screen showing email records. What we need is evidence of the material fraud, something that directly links Sterling to the substitutions and the money. They worked late into the night, following digital trails through layers of corporate bureaucracy. Ethan proved surprisingly adept at spotting the patterns. His engineering background and recent experience being framed gave him insights into how evidence could be hidden in plain sight. Around 10 p.m., they went down to check on Lily, finding her curled up on the couch, asleep halfway through her second movie. Ethan carried her to the bedroom, tucking her in with her unicorn blanket that he'd brought from home. She's beautiful, Victoria said softly from the doorway. You're a good father, Ethan. I'm trying, he replied, smoothing Lily's hair back from her face. Some days it feels like I'm barely keeping it together. The fact that you worry about that means you're doing better than you think. They returned upstairs and the investigation continued. Around midnight, Sterling made another move, accessing the company's secure file server from his home computer, pulling up documents related to the material supply contracts. Victoria's security systems tracked every file he viewed, every document he downloaded. He's building a case, Ethan realized. Look at what he's accessing, all the legitimate supply chain improvements he's made, the cost savings, the efficiency reports. He's creating a narrative where he's the hero who's been holding the company together, while Victoria is the unstable CEO who needs to be replaced for everyone's good, Victoria finished grimly. He's probably planning to present this to the board if the merger falls apart, position himself as the steady hand who can guide the company through the crisis. Can we trace the material fraud directly to him? Ethan asked. There has to be a smoking gun somewhere. Victoria pulled up the authorization logs for the material substitutions, and together they began the painstaking process of tracing each transaction back to its origin point. It took 3 hours, cross-referencing shipping manifests with billing records and authorization codes, but eventually a pattern emerged that was impossible to deny. Every single fraudulent substitution had been authorized using Sterling's executive code, routed through shell accounts that had been set up with his digital signature. He'd been clever about disguising the trail, but not clever enough. The evidence was there, buried in layers of legitimate transactions, but unmistakably present. We have him, Ethan said, as the first light of dawn began filtering through the office windows. This is enough to go to the authorities. Victoria stared at the screens, her exhaustion evident, but her mind still sharp. It's enough for a criminal investigation, yes, but it's not enough to save the merger. If I expose this now, the scandal will spook Nathan Donovan regardless of whether Sterling is guilty. The merger will collapse, and that's exactly what Sterling wants. So what do? We finish the trap. Victoria pulled up her calendar, showing the Donovan merger meeting scheduled for 2:00 p.m. that afternoon. I'm going to that meeting, Ethan. Sterling thinks I'm too compromised to attend, but I'm going to walk in there with Nathan Donovan and finalize this merger before Sterling can sabotage it. And then, her expression hardened. I'm going to destroy him with every piece of evidence we've gathered. He'll know something's wrong the moment you show up, Ethan warned. Let him know. By then it'll be too late. Victoria stood, stretching muscles cramped from hours at the computer. You should go home, get some rest. Bring Lily back to Mrs. Chen. I'll have Richard drive you. But Ethan shook his head. I'm seeing this through. Lily's safe downstairs, and I want to be there when you confront Sterling. After what he tried to do to you, after what people like him have done to both of us, I want to see justice happen for once. Victoria looked at him for a long moment, and something passed between them that went beyond professional partnership. Recognition, perhaps. Understanding. The bond between two people who'd both been betrayed and were choosing to fight back together. All right, she said quietly. Then let's finish this. The morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that made everything feel sharper, more significant. Ethan had managed maybe 2 hours of sleep on the couch in Victoria's apartment, while Lily continued sleeping peacefully in the bedroom. When he woke, stiff and disoriented, Victoria was already showering in the adjoining bathroom, preparing for the confrontation that would define both their futures. He checked on Lily, finding her still asleep, her small chest rising and falling with the perfect rhythm of childhood dreams. For a moment, Ethan allowed himself to simply stand in the doorway and watch her, thinking about how different their lives would be after today. If Victoria's plan worked, they'd have stability, security, a future. If it failed, he might have dragged his daughter into something dangerous for nothing. She's lucky to have you, Victoria's voice came from behind him. She was dressed in a navy power suit that screamed executive authority, her hair pulled back in a severe style that made her look both elegant and formidable. Not every father would risk so much to give his child a better life. Not every CEO would take a chance on an unemployed stranger, Ethan countered, turning to face her. We're both taking risks today. Victoria's expression softened slightly. The difference is, I'm risking money and reputation. You're risking your daughter's stability. If this goes wrong, if Sterling somehow turns this back on us, you could lose more than just this job. Then we'd better make sure it doesn't go wrong, Ethan said with more confidence than he felt. What's the plan for Lily? I can't take her to this meeting. Mrs. Chen, Victoria said immediately. Richard already called her this morning. I hope you don't mind. She said she'd be delighted to watch Lily for the day, and she insisted on making her something called special dumplings for lunch. Apparently Lily's been begging for them. Ethan felt a wave of affection for his elderly neighbor, whose kindness never seemed to have limits. Mrs. Chen's been more family to us than most of our actual relatives. I'll pay her for her time. Already handled, Victoria interrupted. I had Richard drop off a gift basket and an envelope this morning. Consider it employee benefits extending to childcare support. Before Ethan could protest or thank her, Lily emerged from the bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Daddy? Where are we? Remember the nice lady's office from last night, Ladybug? Ethan crouched down to her level. We stayed here because Daddy was working late, but now we're going to take you to Mrs. Chen's house for the day while I finish helping Miss Victoria with something important. Lily processed this with the adaptability of children who've learned that sometimes plans change suddenly. Okay, can I have breakfast first? Victoria had anticipated this too. Within 20 minutes, they were sitting around the apartment's dining table eating bagels and fruit that had appeared courtesy of Richard's morning errands. Lily chattered about her dreams while Ethan and Victoria exchanged glances over her head, both of them acutely aware that in a few hours, everything would come to a head. Richard drove them to Ethan's building, where Mrs. Chen was waiting with her door already open and the promised dumplings steaming on her stove. Lily hugged Ethan goodbye with the casual affection of a child who'd never learned to fear that her parent might not come back, then ran inside to see what Mrs. Chen was cooking. The elderly woman caught Ethan's eye and nodded once, a gesture that conveyed understanding and support more effectively than words could have. Back in the SUV, the atmosphere shifted from domestic routine to strategic preparation. Victoria pulled out a tablet, showing Ethan the final pieces of evidence they'd compiled during the night. "Sterling's going to be at the Donovan meeting," she said. "He thinks he's leading it, representing Hale Industries while I recover from my trauma. When I walk in instead, he's going to know immediately that something's wrong." "Will he try to stop the signing?" Ethan asked. "He can't, not without revealing his true motivations. If he objects to the merger in front of Nathan Donovan, he'll need to provide reasons, and any reasons he gives will open him up to questions he can't answer." Victoria's fingers moved across the tablet, pulling up a floor plan of the conference room where the meeting would take place. "The signing is scheduled for 2:00 p.m. At 2:30, I'm going to excuse myself and Nathan for a private discussion. That's when I'll tell them about the investigation, show him the preliminary evidence of Sterling's fraud." "Why tell Donovan at all?" Ethan asked. "Why not just sign the merger and deal with Sterling afterward?" "Because Nathan deserves to know what kind of rot he's merging with. If I hide this from him and it comes out later, it destroys the trust that this entire partnership is built on. Better to be transparent now, show him that I'm handling the problem, and give him the choice to proceed or back out with full knowledge." Victoria met Ethan's eyes. "It's a risk, but it's the right thing to do." Ethan recognized the parallel to his own choice at the bus stop, doing what was right rather than what was safe. It was one of the things he was beginning to admire about Victoria. For all her wealth and power, she hadn't lost the ability to choose integrity over convenience. The Donovan Technologies building was a gleaming tower of glass and steel in the heart of the financial district. Richard pulled up to a private entrance and Victoria took a deep breath before stepping out of the vehicle. "Stay close," she told Ethan. "I want you in that conference room with me. Sterling needs to see that I didn't come alone, that someone else knows everything he's done." They rode the elevator to the 15th floor, where Nathan Donovan's executive suite occupied a space that rivaled Victoria's own crisis center in its expensive minimalism. A receptionist greeted them with professional warmth, clearly expecting Victoria, but surprised by Ethan's presence. "Ms. Hale, Mr. Donovan is waiting for you in conference room A. Mr. Sterling arrived about 20 minutes ago." The receptionist's eyes flicked to Ethan. "And this is?" "Ethan Parker, my senior consultant," Victoria said smoothly. "He'll be joining us for the meeting." If the receptionist thought this was unusual, she didn't show it. She simply nodded and gestured toward a hallway lined with modern art. "Right this way." The walk to conference room A felt like a march toward judgment. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline surging through his system as they approached the door. Through the glass walls, he could see David Sterling standing near the head of a massive conference table, chatting amiably with a distinguished-looking man in his 60s who must have been Nathan Donovan. Sterling was relaxed, confident, completely unaware that his carefully constructed scheme was about to collapse around him. Victoria paused with her hand on the door handle. "Ready?" "Ready," Ethan confirmed, though he'd never felt less ready for anything in his life. Victoria opened the door and stepped inside with the kind of commanding presence that instantly drew every eye in the room. Sterling's expression shifted through several emotions in rapid succession. Surprise, confusion, and then a flash of something that might have been fear before his professional mask slammed back into place. "Victoria," he said, his voice warm but his eyes calculating. "I thought you were resting. You should have told me you were feeling well enough to attend. I would have arranged transportation." "I arranged my own transportation, thank you, David." Victoria moved to shake Nathan Donovan's hand, her smile genuine. "Nathan, it's good to see you. I apologize for the confusion about my attendance. There was some miscommunication within my team." Nathan Donovan was a tall, lean man with silver hair and the kind of face that suggested both intelligence and caution. He shook Victoria's hand warmly, but his eyes were sharp as they took in the dynamics of the room. "No apology necessary, Victoria. I'm glad you're here and that you're well. David mentioned you'd had some trouble the other night. A mugging, I believe." A minor incident, greatly exaggerated, Victoria said dismissively. Nothing that would prevent me from being here for such an important occasion. She gestured to Ethan. This is Ethan Parker, my senior consultant. He's been instrumental in some recent internal projects. Ethan, Nathan Donovan. Ethan shook Donovan's hand, aware of Sterling's gaze boring into him with barely concealed hostility. Sterling hadn't expected Victoria to bring anyone with her, and the presence of an unknown consultant was clearly unsettling him. Shall we get started? Victoria suggested, taking a seat at the conference table. I believe we have a merger to finalize. The next hour proceeded with the careful choreography of high-stakes business negotiations. Lawyers from both companies reviewed the final merger documents, addressing minor language clarifications and technical details. Nathan Donovan asked thoughtful questions about integration timelines and reporting structures. Victoria answered with the easy competence of someone who'd lived with these details for 18 months. And through it all, David Sterling sat at the table with a smile frozen on his face, contributing occasional comments but clearly struggling to understand what was happening. He'd expected to lead this meeting, to be the hero saving the merger, while Victoria languished in her compromised state. Instead, he was being systematically sidelined, reduced to an observer in his own attempted coup. Ethan watched Sterling carefully, noting the tells that Marcus Webb had displayed in similar circumstances. The slight tension in the jaw, the way his fingers drummed against the table when he thought no one was looking, the forced casualness of his posture that actually screamed discomfort. Sterling knew something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what, and that uncertainty was eating at him. At 2:25 p.m., 5 minutes ahead of schedule, Victoria signed the final merger document with a flourish. Nathan Donovan added his signature below hers, and just like that, Hale Industries and Donovan Technologies were officially partners. Champagne appeared, toasts were made, and lawyers began packing up their materials with the satisfied efficiency of people whose billable hours had just concluded successfully. Nathan, Victoria said as the celebration began to wind down. Could I have a few minutes of your time privately? There's a sensitive matter I need to discuss regarding the integration process. Of course, Nathan agreed immediately. He glanced at Sterling. David, thank you for your preparation work on this. Why don't you head back to Hale Industries and begin coordinating with your team on the transition protocols we discussed? It was a polite dismissal, but a dismissal nonetheless. Sterling's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Actually, if this concerns integration, I should probably be part of the discussion. Supply chain coordination will be critical to— I'll brief you later, David, Victoria interrupted smoothly. This is more of a strategic conversation. Nathan and I need to align on some board-level issues first. Sterling had no choice but to acquiesce without looking insubordinate. He gathered his materials, shook Nathan's hand, and headed for the door. As he passed Ethan, their eyes met for just a moment, and Ethan saw naked fury flash across Sterling's face before it disappeared behind another professional smile. Congratulations on the new position, Ethan, Sterling said, his voice pleasant and his eyes promising retribution. I look forward to working with you. Likewise, Ethan replied evenly, refusing to be intimidated. When Sterling had gone, Nathan led Victoria and Ethan to a smaller private office adjoining the conference room. The moment the door closed, his demeanor shifted from celebratory to serious. All right, Victoria, what's really going on? Your presence here today, this mysterious senior consultant who appeared from nowhere, David Sterling's obvious discomfort, something's happening that I'm not aware of. Victoria didn't waste time with preamble. Nathan, in the past 48 hours, I've uncovered evidence of systematic fraud within Hale Industries. One of my senior executives has been stealing from the company through material substitutions and billing irregularities. The total amount is estimated at over $20 million. Nathan's expression remained carefully neutral, but Ethan saw his knuckles whiten as he gripped the edge of his desk. 20 million, that's not a rounding error. No, it's not. And the executive responsible is David Sterling, your SVP of Supply Chain, the man who just congratulated us on the merger. Nathan's voice was flat, controlled, but Ethan could hear the anger underneath. Do you have proof? Victoria pulled out her tablet, bringing up the evidence they'd compiled. Authorization codes, shipping manifests, billing records. Ethan and I spent last night tracing the fraud back to its source. Every fraudulent transaction was authorized using Sterling's executive access, routed through accounts he established. Nathan studied the data in silence, his eyes moving rapidly across the screen as he absorbed the implications. When he finally looked up, his expression was grim. "This is why you were targeted 2 nights ago. Sterling drugged you and staged a mugging to discredit you before this merger could be finalized." "That's our conclusion, yes. If I'd been found in that alley by police, if the story had gone public, you might have delayed or canceled the merger. That would have given Sterling time to cover his tracks and position himself as my replacement." Victoria's voice hardened. "He was willing to destroy me to protect his scheme. But his plan failed because a stranger helped you at a bus stop," Nathan said, looking at Ethan with new understanding. "That would be you, I presume?" "I gave her bus fare," Ethan said simply. "I didn't know who she was. I just knew she needed help." Nathan absorbed this information with the kind of thoughtful silence that suggested he was recalculating everything he thought he knew about the situation. "Victoria, I appreciate your honesty in bringing this to me before the ink is even dry on our merger. A lot of CEOs would have hidden this, dealt with it quietly, and hoped I never found out." "That's not how I do business," Victoria said. "You're my partner now, Nathan. You deserve to know what kind of problems you've just inherited, and you deserve the choice to back out if this is more risk than you're willing to accept." "Back out?" Nathan's eyebrows rose. "Victoria, if anything, this makes me more confident in our partnership. You discovered fraud, you investigated it thoroughly, and you're handling it transparently. That's exactly the kind of integrity I want in a business partner." He leaned forward. "What's your plan for Sterling?" "Criminal charges, immediate termination, full forensic audit of his division to determine the complete scope of the fraud," Victoria listed. "I've already contacted the FBI's white-collar crime division. They'll be executing a warrant on Sterling's home and office within the hour." "Does Sterling know you're on to him?" "Not yet. He suspects something's wrong. My presence here today clearly rattled him, but he doesn't know we have evidence. That's why timing is critical. I need to move against him before he has a chance to destroy documents or flee." Nathan stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city. "I assume you're going to confront him personally." "I am, and I'd like you there when I do it. Not as a requirement, but as my partner. I want Sterling to understand that this isn't just about Hale Industries anymore. He tried to sabotage a merger that involves both our companies. That makes this your concern too." Nathan considered this, then nodded decisively. "I'll come. But Victoria, I want your word that you're going to let the authorities handle the prosecution. No corporate settlements, no quiet resignations in exchange for returning the money. This man tried to destroy you. He deserves to face the full consequences." "You have my word," Victoria said. "Sterling's going to prison." The plan came together quickly. Nathan would accompany Victoria back to Hale Industries headquarters, where Sterling had presumably returned after leaving the Donovan building. They would confront him in Victoria's office with Ethan present as a witness and the FBI agents ready to make an arrest the moment Sterling implicated himself. The ride back to Hale Industries felt different from any of the other trips Ethan had taken in Victoria's SUV. This time, Nathan Donovan rode with them, and the atmosphere was charged with the anticipation of justice about to be served. Richard navigated through midday traffic with his usual efficiency, while Victoria and Nathan discussed the logistics of the confrontation. "Sterling's smart," Nathan observed. "He's not going to confess just because you accuse him. You'll need to present the evidence in a way that makes denial impossible." "I have something better than evidence," Victoria said. "I have a recording of his conversation with your CTO last night where he tried to sabotage this merger by planting doubts about my mental stability." Nathan's expression darkened. "Richard Wu was meeting with Sterling? Without my knowledge?" "Sterling manipulated him," Victoria explained. "Made it seem like he was just being a concerned colleague looking out for everyone's interests. I don't think Wu realized he was being used." "I'll deal with Richard separately," Nathan said tersely. "He should have known better than to have private meetings with executives from a company we were in active negotiations with. But right now, let's focus on Sterling." Hale Industries headquarters was a 40-story tower of steel and glass that dominated the skyline in this part of the city. Victoria's private elevator took them directly to the executive floor, bypassing the lobby and the curious eyes of employees who would have wondered why their CEO was returning with Nathan Donovan and an unknown consultant. Victoria's executive assistant, a competent-looking woman named Helen, stood from her desk as they approached. "Miss Hale, I wasn't expecting you back today. Mr. Sterling returned about an hour ago. He's in his office." "Thank you, Helen. Could you ask David to come to my office immediately? Tell him it's urgent." "Of course." Helen picked up her phone, and within moments, Sterling's response came back. He'd be there in 5 minutes. Victoria led them into her office, a space that matched the crisis center in its sophisticated minimalism, but felt more lived in, with personal touches that spoke to her life beyond work. Photos on the credenza showed Victoria with various dignitaries and business leaders. Awards lined one wall, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread out below like a kingdom she commanded. "He's going to know something's wrong the moment he sees Nathan here," Ethan said quietly. "Good," Victoria replied. "I want him off balance. Scared people make mistakes." They positioned themselves strategically. Victoria behind her desk in the power position, Nathan in one of the guest chairs, and Ethan standing near the window where he could observe Sterling's reactions without being the focus of attention. Victoria activated a recording app on her phone, setting it on her desk where it would capture every word of the coming confrontation. The knock on the door came exactly 5 minutes later. Sterling entered with his usual confidence, but it evaporated the moment he saw Nathan Donovan sitting in Victoria's office. "Nathan," Sterling said, his smile slightly strained, "I didn't realize you were coming to Hale Industries today. The merger celebration is continuing here." "Sit down, David," Victoria said, her voice cold enough to frost glass. Sterling's eyes darted between Victoria, Nathan, and Ethan, clearly trying to calculate what was happening. He sat slowly, his body language shifting from confident to defensive. "Is something wrong?" he asked, and Ethan had to admire his composure. Even knowing he was caught, Sterling was trying to maintain the facade. "I'm going to ask you some questions, David, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer them," Victoria began. Two nights ago, I was drugged, robbed, and left in an alley. Do you know anything about that?" "What?" "No, of course not. I was as shocked as anyone when I heard about your mugging." Sterling's performance of outrage was nearly convincing. "Why would you even ask me that?" "Because you were the one who stood to gain the most from my absence," Victoria said. "You thought if I was discredited or removed, you could step into my position. You could stop the Donovan merger, or at least delay it long enough to cover up the fraud you've been committing for the past 8 months. Sterling's face paled, but he held his ground. "Victoria, I don't know what you think you've discovered, but I assure you, I have your authorization codes on $20 million worth of fraudulent material substitutions," Victoria interrupted, her voice like a blade. "I have shipping manifests showing premium materials billed to clients and standard materials actually delivered. I have the shell accounts you set up to funnel the difference into your own pockets. And I have a recording of you meeting with Nathan's CTO last night, trying to sabotage our merger by planting lies about my mental stability." Each revelation hit Sterling like a physical blow. His composure cracked, then shattered, and suddenly he looked like what he actually was, a desperate man who'd gambled everything and lost. "You can't prove any of that," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Actually, I can," Victoria replied. She turned her computer monitor to face him, showing the spreadsheet of evidence they'd compiled. "Every transaction traced back to you. Every authorization code matched to your executive access. Every dollar accounted for and documented." Sterling stared at the screen, and Ethan watched the moment when he realized the game was over. His shoulders slumped, his hands trembled slightly, and when he looked back up at Victoria, there was nothing left of the confident executive who'd walked into the office. "Why, David?" Victoria asked, and for the first time there was genuine emotion in her voice. Hurt, betrayal, confusion. "I trusted you, I gave you opportunities, promoted you, brought you into my inner circle. Why did you do this?" Sterling laughed, a bitter sound that held no humor. "Because it was never going to be enough. You were never going to make me CEO. I was always going to be your second, your helper, the person who executed your vision but never had one of my own. I built that supply chain division from nothing, saved this company millions in efficiency improvements. And what did I get? A nice salary and a pat on the head while you got all the credit. So you stole from me, Victoria said flatly. I took what I earned, Sterling corrected, what I deserved. And when you announced the Donovan merger, I knew I was out of time. The combined audit systems would have caught the discrepancies within months. I had to act. By drugging and abandoning me in an alley, Victoria's voice was steel, by trying to destroy my reputation and my company. I didn't mean for it to go that far, Sterling said, and for a moment he sounded genuinely regretful. The plan was just to delay the merger, give me time to clean up the evidence and resign quietly. But then you disappeared from that alley before the police found you. You went off grid, and I didn't know if you were dead or just hiding. I panicked. I had to move forward with the contingency plan, try to salvage the situation. By attempting to sabotage the merger that you ultimately failed to prevent, Nathan spoke for the first time, his voice laced with disgust. I'm curious, David. What did you think would happen? That I'd just accept your word over Victoria's? That I wouldn't notice the fraud you'd embedded in the company I was merging with? Sterling turned to Nathan, desperation flashing across his face. I could have fixed it. If you delayed the merger like Richard was supposed to suggest, I would have had time to make the numbers right, to pay back the money. With what? Victoria demanded. Where exactly were you going to get $20 million, David? Sterling's silence was answer enough. There was no plan, no way to make restitution. He'd simply been hoping to delay the inevitable, to buy himself a few more weeks of freedom before everything collapsed. The FBI is waiting downstairs, Victoria said quietly. They have a warrant for your arrest. You're going to be charged with embezzlement, corporate fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and assault for what you did to me 2 nights ago. Nathan and I will both be testifying at your trial, along with everyone else whose lives you tried to destroy to protect yourself. Sterling's remaining composure shattered completely. Victoria, please. You don't understand what prison will do to someone like me. I'm not a criminal. I'm a businessman who made some bad choices. We can work this out. I'll pay back every dollar. I'll resign quietly. I'll sign whatever non-disclosure agreements you want. No, Victoria said simply. You tried to destroy me, David. You drugged me. You abandoned me. You tried to ruin my reputation and my company. The only reason I'm not dead or permanently damaged is because a stranger at a bus stop showed me more kindness than you ever did. So no, we're not working anything out. You're going to face the consequences of your choices. She pressed a button on her desk, and within moments, 2 FBI agents entered the office, followed by building security. Sterling stood on shaking legs as the agents read him his rights, his face ashen as they placed handcuffs around his wrists. Victoria, he said one last time as they led him toward the door. I'm sorry. I really am sorry. So am I, Victoria replied. I'm sorry I ever trusted you. The door closed behind Sterling and the agents, leaving Victoria, Nathan, and Ethan alone in the sudden silence. Victoria stood motionless for a long moment, staring at the door, and Ethan saw the tremor in her hands before she clenched them into fists. Are you all right? Nathan asked gently. I will be, Victoria said. She turned to face them both, and Ethan saw tears threatening at the corners of her eyes that she refused to let fall. He was my friend. Or I thought he was. How did I miss this? How did I not see what he was doing? Because you trusted him, Ethan said quietly. Because you gave him the benefit of the doubt, the way good leaders do. What he did isn't your failure, Victoria. It's his. Nathan nodded agreement. Ethan's right. Sterling made his choices, and now he's paying for them. You handled this exactly right. You investigated thoroughly, you gathered evidence, you confronted him with the truth. That takes courage. Victoria wiped at her eyes impatiently, angry at herself for showing weakness. I should get back to work. There's going to be fallout from this. Press inquiries, employee concerns, board questions. I need to manage the narrative before it manages me. You need to take a breath, Nathan countered. You just solved a major fraud case, finalized a billion-dollar merger, and confronted someone who tried to destroy you. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you've barely slept in 2 days. The narrative can wait an hour while you collect yourself. Ethan watched Victoria struggle with this advice, saw the CEO part of her wanting to push forward while the human part recognized her own exhaustion. Finally, the human part won. "You're right," she admitted. "I need a minute." Nathan stood, preparing to leave. "I'm going back to my office to deal with Richard Wu and start coordinating the integration plans with my team. But Victoria, I want you to know something. What happened today, the way you handled Sterling, the way you trusted Ethan to help you, the integrity you showed in bringing this to me before it became a bigger problem, that's exactly why I wanted to merge with Hale Industries. You're the kind of leader I want as a partner." He shook her hand, then Ethan's, and left them alone in the office. The silence that followed felt heavy with unspoken things, emotions that neither of them quite knew how to name. "You should go get your daughter," Victoria said finally. "She'll be wondering where you are, and Mrs. Chen probably has more dumplings than any one child can eat." "What about you?" Ethan asked. "Are you going to be okay here by yourself?" Victoria smiled faintly. "I've been okay by myself for a long time, Ethan. This is nothing new." But something in her voice suggested she wasn't entirely convinced of that truth anymore. Something had shifted between them during these intense days, a connection forged in crisis that went deeper than professional partnership. Ethan felt it, and he suspected Victoria did too, even if neither of them was ready to acknowledge it yet. "I'll pick up Lily and come back," Ethan decided. "You said this job involves irregular hours and high stress. Well, we've got both of those today. Besides, you promised her pizza last night, and Lily never forgets a promise." Victoria's smile became more genuine. "I did promise pizza, didn't I? All right, bring your daughter back. We'll order dinner and decompress. Maybe watch something mindless on that enormous television I never use." "It's a plan," Ethan agreed. He headed for the door, then paused. "Victoria, what you said to Sterling about the stranger at the bus stop showing you more kindness than he did, you know that kindness goes both ways, right? You gave me a job, a chance to rebuild my life, trust when I desperately needed someone to believe in me. That's not nothing." $18 for a $120,000 job, Victoria said. "I think I still came out ahead on that transaction." "It was never about the money," Ethan said quietly. "Not for either of us." Their eyes met across the office, and in that moment, Ethan understood something that would take both of them much longer to fully acknowledge. The bus stop encounter hadn't just changed their circumstances. It had changed them, opened up possibilities that neither had been looking for but both desperately needed. The future was still uncertain, still full of challenges and complications. But for the first time in longer than Ethan could remember, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do, with exactly the right person beside him. Justice had been served. Sterling was in custody, the merger was secure, and the fraud had been exposed. But more than that, something new had begun, something that started with $18 at a bus stop, and had blossomed into partnership, trust, and the fragile beginning of something that might someday become much more. Ethan found Lily at Mrs. Chen's apartment, covered in flour and beaming with pride over a tray of slightly misshapen dumplings that she'd helped make. The elderly woman smiled knowingly when Ethan explained they'd be going back to Victoria's office for the evening, and she pressed a container of the dumplings into his hands, with instructions to share them with the nice lady who's been so generous. "She's more than generous, isn't she?" Mrs. Chen said quietly in Mandarin, which she sometimes used when she wanted to speak to Ethan without Lily understanding. He'd picked up enough over the years to follow basic conversations. "This woman, she sees you, not just what you can do for her, but who you are." "It's just a job, Mrs. Chen," Ethan replied, though even as he said it, he knew it wasn't entirely true. Mrs. Chen hummed, her expression suggesting she saw right through his deflection. "Just a job that has you smiling for the first time in months. Just a job that puts light back in your eyes." "Okay, just a job." She patted his arm. "You're a good man, Ethan. You deserve someone who sees that. Don't be afraid of it when it comes." The words stayed with Ethan during the ride back to Victoria's building, even as Lily chattered about the dumpling-making process and how Mrs. Chen had taught her to fold the edges just right. Richard met them in the parking garage with his usual stoic efficiency, but Ethan thought he caught the hint of a smile when Lily proudly showed him the container of dumplings. They found Victoria in the apartment rather than the office upstairs, changed out of her power suit into jeans and a simple sweater that made her look younger, more approachable. She'd pulled her hair down from its severe style, and the transformation was remarkable. This wasn't the CEO who'd just sent a corrupt executive to prison. This was just Victoria, tired and human and genuinely pleased to see them. "I heard there were dumplings," she said, greeting them at the door. "Mrs. Chen made them," Lily announced, "and I helped. Some of them are a little wonky because my fingers are smaller, but Miss Victoria, Mrs. Chen, says wonky dumplings taste just as good as perfect ones." "Mrs. Chen is very wise," Victoria agreed solemnly. "Should we heat them up for dinner? I also ordered that pizza I promised, but dumplings sound like an excellent appetizer." They fell into an easy domestic rhythm that felt both natural and surreal. Victoria heated the dumplings while Ethan helped Lily wash the flour from her hands and face. When the pizza arrived, pepperoni as promised, plus a margarita that Victoria claimed was her favorite, they spread out in the living room rather than sitting formally at the dining table. Lily, with the adaptability of children who sensed when adults needed lightness rather than questions, dominated the conversation with stories about school, her friends, and her ambitious plans to try out for the soccer team next year. Victoria listened with genuine interest, asking follow-up questions that showed she was actually paying attention rather than just being polite. "My friend Emma says soccer is hard," Lily confided. "She says I'll probably not make the team because I've never played before. But Daddy says if you work hard at something, you can get better. Right, Daddy?" "Right, Ladybug," Ethan confirmed. "Hard work and practice can take you pretty far." "I played soccer in college," Victoria mentioned casually. "Midfielder. I wasn't the fastest or the most skilled, but I worked harder than anyone else on the field. By my senior year, I was team captain." Lily's eyes went wide. "Really? You were a captain? Really? And you want to know my secret?" Victoria leaned in conspiratorially. "I practiced every single day, even when I didn't feel like it. 20 minutes of ball control drills every morning before class. Some days I was terrible at it. Some days I wanted to quit, but I kept showing up, and eventually my feet learned to do what my brain wanted them to do." "Could you teach me?" Lily asked hopefully. "I don't have a soccer ball, but maybe if I practice before tryouts, Emma will be wrong about me not making the team." "I think that could be arranged," Victoria said, glancing at Ethan for permission. When he nodded, she continued, "How about this? We'll get you a proper soccer ball, and whenever your dad brings you by, we can spend some time working on fundamentals. Deal?" "Deal!" Lily stuck out her hand to shake on it with the seriousness of someone sealing a major business agreement, and Victoria shook it with equal gravity. Watching them together, Ethan felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just his boss being kind to his daughter. This was Victoria choosing to invest time and attention in Lily's dreams, seeing value in making a 7-year-old's soccer aspirations feel important. It was the kind of thing Sarah would have done, and the parallel made his throat tight with emotion he didn't quite know how to process. After dinner, they queued up a movie that Lily had been wanting to see, something animated with talking animals and a predictable but heartwarming plot. Victoria sat on one end of the couch, Ethan on the other, with Lily curled up between them wrapped in a blanket. About halfway through the film, Lily's head drooped against Ethan's shoulder, her breathing evening out into sleep. "She's out," Ethan whispered. Victoria glanced over, her expression softening. "Long day for all of us. Should we move her to the bedroom?" "Not yet. She'll wake up if I carry her now. Better to wait until she's deeper asleep." Ethan adjusted his position slightly to make Lily more comfortable. "Thank you for this. For dinner, for the soccer offer, for making her feel welcome here. You didn't have to do any of that." "I wanted to," Victoria said simply. She muted the television, creating a bubble of quiet around them. "She's a great kid, Ethan. You've done an amazing job raising her." "I've done my best. Some days that feels like enough, other days it feels like I'm barely holding it together." Ethan looked down at his sleeping daughter. "When Sarah died, I didn't know if I could do this alone. Everyone kept telling me I was strong, that I'd figure it out, but I didn't feel strong. I felt terrified." "What scared you most?" Victoria asked quietly. "That I'd mess her up somehow, that she'd grow up missing her mother so much that nothing I did would be enough to fill that hole, that I'd fail at the one thing that mattered most." Ethan's voice caught slightly. I know rationally that I can't be both parents, that I can only be the best version of myself and hope that's sufficient. But the fear doesn't care about rationality. Victoria was silent for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. My mother died when I was 9. Cancer. My father raised me alone after that, and I spent years being angry at him because he wasn't her. He couldn't braid my hair the way she did, couldn't comfort me the way she could, couldn't fill the mother-shaped void in my life. I blamed him for not being enough. I'm sorry, Ethan said. Don't be. I'm telling you this because I need you to know that Lily won't remember whether you braided her hair perfectly or whether you always knew the right thing to say. What she'll remember is that you showed up. Every single day, you showed up for her. You put her first, you sacrificed for her. You loved her enough to keep going even when you were terrified. Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. It took me until I was an adult to realize that my father had been doing the same thing. He wasn't perfect, but he was present. And that's what mattered. Ethan felt the weight of those words settle over him like a benediction. When did you and your father work things out? About 5 years before he passed away. I just started Hale Industries, and he told me he was proud of me. We had coffee every Sunday morning after that until he died. I wish I'd given him those Sunday mornings sooner. Victoria wiped at her eyes. Don't wait to forgive yourself for not being perfect, Ethan. Lily already loves you exactly as you are. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the muted movie playing out its predictable happy ending on the screen. Lily shifted slightly in her sleep, murmuring something unintelligible before settling again. The moment felt suspended in time, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with shared understanding. What happens now? Ethan finally asked. With Sterling in custody, the merger finalized, the crisis resolved. What comes next? Victoria considered the question. Investigation continues for a few more weeks while the FBI builds their case. I'll need to coordinate with them, provide testimony, help them understand the full scope of the fraud. There'll be media coverage once the arrest becomes public, so we'll need a communications strategy. Board meetings to reassure investors that the company is stable despite the scandal. Integration planning with Nathan's team to make sure the merger proceeds smoothly. Sounds like you'll be busy. We'll be busy, Victoria corrected. You're my senior consultant, remember? This is your job now, too. I'm going to need you to help with the forensic audit of Sterling's division, work with the investigators, assist with the integration planning. You have skills I need, Ethan, and more importantly, I trust your judgment. Even though we've known each other for less than a week? Especially because we've known each other for less than a week. In that time, you've proven yourself more loyal and capable than people I've worked with for years. Victoria met his eyes. David Sterling worked for me for 4 years, and I thought I knew him, thought I could trust him. He betrayed me in the worst way possible. You, on the other hand, gave me everything you had when I was a stranger who needed help. That tells me more about your character than any resume or reference could. Ethan felt the weight of that trust, the responsibility it carried. I won't let you down. I know you won't. That's why I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Victoria paused, choosing her words with obvious care. The senior consultant position was always meant to be temporary, just until we resolved the Sterling situation. But I'd like to offer you something more permanent. Chief of Staff, reporting directly to me. You'd be involved in every major decision, every strategic initiative. It would mean long hours, high pressure, significant responsibility. But it would also mean security for you and Lily, the chance to build something meaningful, and a partnership I think could be genuinely valuable for both of us. The offer hung in the air between them, enormous in its implications. Chief of Staff to a billionaire CEO wasn't just a job. It was a complete transformation of Ethan's life, a path he'd never imagined being open to him. Can I think about it? He asked. Of course. Take all the time you need, but Ethan, I want you to know this isn't charity or gratitude for helping me at the bus stop. This is a genuine offer based on what I've seen you do in the past few days. You're smart, analytical, trustworthy, and you're not afraid to challenge me when you think I'm wrong. Those are rare qualities, and I need them. Before Ethan could respond, Lily stirred awake, blinking groggily at the television. Did I fall asleep? Did I miss the ending? The animals saved their home, and everyone lived happily ever after. Victoria summarized with a smile. Pretty standard ending for this kind of movie. Lily yawned hugely. Daddy, can we go home now? I'm really tired. Ethan checked his watch. It was nearly 9 o'clock, well past Lily's usual bedtime. Yeah, Ladybug, let's get you home and into your own bed. Victoria walked them to the elevator, and as they waited for Richard to bring the car around, she crouched down to Lily's level. Thank you for sharing your dumplings with me tonight. They were delicious. Thank you for the pizza and for saying you'll teach me soccer, Lily replied. Then, with the impulsiveness of tired children, she hugged Victoria. You're really nice, Miss Victoria. I like you. Victoria's arms came around Lily automatically, and when she looked up at Ethan over his daughter's head, her eyes were suspiciously bright. I like you too, Lily, very much. The drive home was quiet. Lily dozing against Ethan's shoulder while the city lights streaked past the SUV's windows. Richard pulled up in front of their building, and Ethan carried his sleeping daughter up the stairs, nodding to Mrs. Chen, who was watching from her doorway with a knowing smile. He tucked Lily into bed with her unicorn blanket, kissed her forehead, and stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching her sleep. So much had changed in such a short time. A week ago, he'd been counting his last dollars and wondering how to survive. Now he had a job, stability, and the offer of something even greater. But more than that, he had Victoria, not just as an employer, but as someone who understood him in ways he hadn't expected. The next few weeks blurred together in a whirlwind of activity. The Sterling arrest became public, generating exactly the media storm Victoria had predicted. She handled it with characteristic grace, appearing in interviews to emphasize that Hale Industries had discovered the fraud internally, had cooperated fully with authorities, and had strengthened their oversight systems to prevent future incidents. Ethan worked behind the scenes, coordinating with the FBI, helping to untangle the complex web of Sterling's fraud, and gradually becoming indispensable to Victoria's operations. He accepted the chief of staff position 3 weeks after she offered it, and the transition from temporary consultant to permanent executive happened so smoothly it felt inevitable. With his first real paycheck in months, Ethan moved himself and Lily into a better apartment. Nothing extravagant, but clean and safe with a bedroom for each of them and windows that didn't rattle in the wind. Mrs. Chen helped them move, and he made sure to set up her new apartment in the same building so she'd be close by. Lily started soccer practice with Victoria, who kept her promise to work on fundamentals. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, they'd meet in a small park near Victoria's office building, and Victoria would run Lily through drills with the same intensity she brought to business negotiations. Ethan would watch from a bench, ostensibly working on his laptop, but mostly just observing the two most important people in his life laughing together as Lily slowly improved her ball control. She's got natural athleticism, Victoria told him after one particularly good practice session. If she keeps working this hard, she'll definitely make that team. She's determined, Ethan agreed. She gets that from her mother. Sarah never gave up on anything she set her mind to. It was the first time Ethan had voluntarily mentioned Sarah to Victoria, and he saw her register the significance of that. They'd become closer over the weeks, not romantically, but with a deepening friendship that felt both comfortable and charged with unspoken possibility. They had lunch together most days, comparing notes on company business, and gradually sharing more personal stories. Ethan learned about Victoria's college years, her struggles to be taken seriously as a young female CEO, the loneliness that came with being at the top. Victoria learned about Sarah's death, about the early days of single parenthood, about Ethan's dreams for Lily's future. The merger integration with Donovan Technologies proceeded smoothly, with Ethan taking a lead role in coordinating the operational details. Nathan Donovan developed a respect for Ethan's work that led to informal mentorship, the older businessman sharing insights about corporate leadership that proved invaluable. The combined company thrived, exceeding first-quarter projections and validating Victoria's strategic vision. Through it all, Ethan felt himself transforming. The desperate, defeated man who'd sat at that bus stop was being replaced by someone more confident, more capable, more willing to believe he deserved good things. Victoria's trust in him had given him permission to trust himself again. But there was still something unspoken between them, a tension that grew stronger with each shared meal, each late-night working session, each moment when their eyes met and held longer than professionally necessary. Mrs. Chen noticed it, making pointed comments about how Lily talked about Miss Victoria constantly. Richard noticed it, his stoic demeanor occasionally cracking into an approving smile when he saw them together. Even Lily seemed to sense it, asking innocently why Miss Victoria didn't come to their apartment for dinner sometimes, instead of them always going to her office. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning in late spring, about 3 months after that fateful bus stop encounter. Lily had a soccer game, her first since making the team with Victoria's coaching, and Victoria had promised to attend. Ethan arrived at the field to find Victoria already there, sitting in the small bleachers with a homemade sign that read, "Go Lily," in bright purple letters. "You made a sign," Ethan said, sitting down beside her. "It's her first game. Signs are mandatory for first games. That's just basic parenting knowledge." Victoria held up a second sign she'd made for Ethan. "I made you one too, in case you forgot." "I didn't forget. I just didn't think about it." Ethan accepted the sign, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. The game was chaotic in the way that children's soccer always is, with players occasionally forgetting which goal they were supposed to defend and more enthusiasm than actual skill on display. But Lily was focused, applying everything Victoria had taught her, and when she scored her first goal, a wobbly shot that somehow found its way past the confused goalkeeper, both Ethan and Victoria jumped to their feet cheering. "That's my girl!" Ethan shouted. "Perfect form on that kick," Victoria added, and Lily beamed at them from the field, waving enthusiastically before running back to position. After the game, which Lily's team won 4-3 in a contest that felt more like organized chaos than actual soccer, they took Lily out for celebratory ice cream. She chattered nonstop about the game, replaying every moment with the intensity of someone describing a World Cup final. Victoria listened with genuine interest, occasionally offering tactical observations that went way over Lily's head, but made her feel like a serious athlete. "Miss Victoria," Lily said, as they walked back toward the parking lot where Richard waited, "are you going to come to all my games?" Victoria glanced at Ethan, unsure how to answer. "Would you like me to come to your games?" "Yeah, it was really fun having both you and Daddy there. It felt like—" Lily paused, searching for the right words. "It felt like how Emma's family looks. She has a mom and a dad who both come to her games." The innocent observation landed like a bomb in the conversation. Ethan felt his breath catch, saw Victoria's steps falter slightly. Neither of them knew how to respond to that, to the implicit wish in Lily's words. "I'd love to come to your games," Victoria finally said carefully. "Whenever your dad says it's okay, and whenever I'm not traveling for work, I'll be there with my sign." "Okay?" Lily seemed satisfied with this answer, skipping ahead to where Richard stood by the SUV. Ethan and Victoria walked more slowly, a careful distance between them. "I'm sorry about that," Ethan said quietly. "She doesn't understand—" "Don't apologize," Victoria interrupted. "She's 7, and she's looking for stability and family. That's completely natural. Still, I don't want her getting the wrong idea about us. We're friends, we work together, but we're not—" Ethan struggled to finish the sentence. "We're not what?" Victoria asked, stopping to face him. Ethan met her eyes and found himself unable to look away. "I don't know what we are, Victoria. I know what we started as, a desperate stranger and someone who needed help. I know what we are professionally, employer and employee. But lately, it feels like we're becoming something else. And I don't know if that's real or if I'm just projecting because you've been so good to us." Victoria was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "What if it is real? What then?" The question hung between them, enormous in its implications. Ethan thought about Sarah, about the guilt he'd carried for 4 years, the feeling that moving on would somehow betray her memory. He thought about Lily, about the risk of bringing someone new into her life who might eventually leave and break her heart. He thought about Victoria, about the massive gap between their worlds, the complications of mixing business and personal feelings. But he also thought about Tuesday and Thursday evenings, watching Victoria coach Lily with patient dedication. About late nights working together when Victoria would order his favorite coffee without him asking. About the way she looked at him sometimes, like he was more than just an employee, more than just the stranger who'd helped her at a bus stop. "Then I'd be terrified," Ethan admitted, "because I'm falling for you, Victoria, and I have no idea how to do that without risking everything I've just started to rebuild." Victoria's eyes widened, then softened. "You think you're the only one who's terrified? Ethan, I'm a billionaire CEO who hasn't had a serious relationship in 5 years because I couldn't find anyone I trusted enough to let my guard down. And then you showed up at the worst moment of my life and gave me everything you had without expecting anything in return. How am I supposed to not fall for that? How am I supposed to not fall for you?" They stood in the parking lot, the spring sunshine warm on their faces, Lily chattering to Richard in the background about her soccer goal. The moment felt crystallized, like something that would define everything that came after. "This is complicated," Ethan said. "Everything worth having is complicated," Victoria replied. "What about the company? The optics of the CEO dating her chief of staff? Let people talk. I didn't build Hale Industries by caring what people thought about my personal life." Victoria stepped closer. "But more importantly, what about Lily? She's the one who matters most in this equation." Ethan looked over at his daughter, saw her laughing at something Richard had said, completely at ease in a world that 3 months ago would have been unimaginable to them both. "She already loves you. That's what scares me. If this doesn't work out, then we'll handle it like adults who care about her well-being above everything else," Victoria finished. "But Ethan, what if it does work out? What if that stranger at the bus stop was actually the beginning of something extraordinary?" Ethan reached out tentatively, taking Victoria's hand. It felt right, like puzzle pieces clicking into place. "I gave you $18. "Best investment I ever received," Victoria said with a small smile. "Are we really doing this?" "I think we already are," Ethan replied. "We've been doing this for weeks. We just haven't admitted it." "Then let's admit it." Victoria squeezed his hand. "Let's see where this goes, carefully and honestly, with Lily's well-being as our first priority. And if it gets too complicated, if the business side starts conflicting with the personal side, then we'll figure it out together. That's what partners do." Victoria's smile widened. "We've already survived corporate espionage and FBI investigations together. Dating should be relatively simple by comparison." Ethan laughed, the sound surprising him with its genuine joy. "Nothing about you is simple, Victoria Hale." "Good thing you seem to like complicated, Ethan Parker." They walked hand in hand to the SUV, where Lily immediately noticed and her eyes went wide. "Are you holding hands?" "We are," Victoria confirmed. "Is that okay with you?" Lily considered this with the seriousness of someone making a major decision. Then she grinned. "Does this mean you'll come to all my games now, and maybe have dinner at our apartment sometimes, and teach me more soccer tricks?" "It means all of those things," Victoria agreed, "if that's what you want." "That's what I want." Lily threw her arms around both of them, creating an awkward 3-person hug that somehow felt perfect. "This is the best day ever." As Richard drove them back toward the city, toward their separate apartments that might someday become something more combined, Ethan felt the last pieces of his old life falling away. The fear, the desperation, the belief that he would always be struggling alone against an uncaring world. In their place was something new: hope, partnership, and the radical notion that sometimes giving away your last $18 could change absolutely everything. The future was still uncertain, still full of challenges they'd need to navigate carefully. But for the first time since Sarah's death, Ethan wasn't facing it alone. He had Victoria beside him, Lily between them, and the growing certainty that sometimes the best things in life came from the moments when you chose kindness over self-preservation. $18 had bought more than bus fare. It had bought a future neither of them had expected, and both of them desperately needed. The transition from colleagues to something more happened gradually, like seasons changing, so natural that, looking back, Ethan couldn't pinpoint exactly when work dinners became dates, when strategic planning sessions started, including discussions about Lily's upcoming school projects, when Victoria's apartment became a place they went together rather than just Ethan's workplace. They were careful at first, painfully aware of the scrutiny that would come if their relationship became public knowledge too quickly. Victoria had been right that people would talk. The CEO dating her chief of staff was exactly the kind of story that corporate gossip mills devoured. But they wanted to establish something real and solid before exposing it to outside judgment. For 3 months, they kept things private. At the office, they maintained professional distance. Their interactions friendly, but carefully neutral. But in the evenings and on weekends, they built something that felt increasingly like a family. Victoria came to Lily's soccer games without fail, cheering louder than any parent in the stands. Ethan cooked dinner at his apartment while Victoria helped Lily with homework. The two of them bent over math problems with matching expressions of concentration. They took weekend trips to museums and parks, creating memories that felt precious in their ordinariness. Mrs. Chen watched these developments with the satisfaction of someone who'd predicted this outcome from the beginning. "I told you," she said to Ethan one evening when he stopped by to return a dish she'd lent them. "That woman sees you, and you see her. This is good." "It's complicated," Ethan protested, though his smile betrayed how happy he actually was. "Love is always complicated," Mrs. Chen replied with the wisdom of her 78 years. "The question is whether it's worth the complication. I think your answer is yes." She was right, of course. Despite the complications, the professional boundaries they had to navigate, the media interest in Victoria's personal life, the careful conversations with Lily about what it meant that Daddy and Miss Victoria were special friends, Ethan had never been happier. Victoria brought joy back into his life, a lightness he hadn't felt since Sarah's death. And more than that, she brought partnership, someone to share the weight of decisions, to celebrate victories with, to weather challenges alongside. The first real test came when the Sterling trial began 6 months after his arrest. The media coverage was intense, with reporters camped outside Hale Industries headquarters, and photographers trying to catch images of Victoria arriving at the courthouse. Ethan accompanied her to every day of testimony, sitting in the gallery as she calmly and methodically detailed Sterling's betrayal, the evidence they'd uncovered, the impact on the company. Sterling's defense team tried to paint Victoria as a vindictive employer punishing an executive for legitimate business disagreements, but the evidence was too overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Sterling was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution plus damages. Walking out of the courthouse after the sentencing, Victoria was mobbed by reporters shouting questions. Ethan stayed close, one hand on the small of her back in a gesture that was protective but would read as professional to cameras. It wasn't until they were safely in the SUV with Richard navigating away from the media circus that Victoria finally let her composure crack. "It's over," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "It's really over." "You did the right thing," Ethan told her, taking her hand. "Sterling deserved to face consequences." "I know, but I still feel, I don't know, not happy, exactly. Relieved, maybe. Sad that it came to this?" Victoria leaned her head against his shoulder. "He was my friend once, or I thought he was. It's hard to reconcile the person I trusted with the person who tried to destroy me." "You don't have to reconcile it," Ethan said quietly. "You can hold both truths at once, that he was someone you cared about and that he made choices that hurt you. Those things can coexist." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher," Ethan replied, and she knew he meant her. That night they had dinner at Victoria's apartment, just the two of them, as Lily was having a sleepover at her friend Emma's house. It was a rare evening alone, and they used it to decompress from the intensity of the trial, talking about everything and nothing while Victoria cooked pasta and Ethan opened a bottle of wine. "I've been thinking," Victoria said as they ate, her tone suggesting she'd been planning this conversation. "About us? About where we're going." Ethan's heart rate picked up. "Okay. We've been doing this dance for 6 months now, together, but not quite together. In a relationship, but hiding it from everyone except the people closest to us. And I understand why. The optics, the professional complications, the need to protect Lily from too much change too fast. But Ethan, I'm tired of hiding how I feel about you." "What are you saying?" Victoria set down her fork, meeting his eyes directly. "I'm saying I love you. I'm saying I want to stop pretending this is casual or temporary. I'm saying I want to build a life with you and Lily, openly and honestly, regardless of what anyone else thinks about it." The words hung in the air between them, enormous and terrifying and wonderful all at once. Ethan felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I love you too. I think I've loved you since you made that ridiculous sign for Lily's first soccer game, maybe even before that. So what's stopping us? Victoria asked. Fear, mostly, Ethan admitted. Fear that I'm not enough for you. That eventually you'll realize you could have someone from your own world, someone who understands business and wealth and power the way you do. Someone who isn't a single dad still figuring out how to navigate life. Victoria reached across the table, taking both his hands in hers. Ethan Parker, you gave me everything you had when I was a stranger at a bus stop. You trusted me when I was at my lowest. You've built yourself into an executive that Nathan Donovan regularly tells me he wishes he could steal for his own company. You're raising an incredible daughter who's kind and brave and confident because of how you've loved her. You are more than enough. You've always been more than enough. I'm still scared, Ethan confessed. Scared of losing this, scared of Lily getting hurt if something goes wrong, scared of messing up the best thing that's happened to me since Sarah died. I'm scared too, Victoria said. Terrified, actually. I've built my entire adult life around being independent, not needing anyone, protecting myself from the vulnerability that comes with love. And then you showed up and demolished every wall I'd built. But Ethan, being scared isn't a reason not to do this. It's a reason to do it carefully, thoughtfully, with intention. We can be scared together. Ethan stood, pulling Victoria up with him, and kissed her with all the pent-up emotion of the past 6 months. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. Marry me, Ethan said, the words surprising him as much as they clearly surprised Victoria. What? Marry me. Not right now, not tomorrow, but someday. When Lily's ready, when we've navigated the professional complications, when the time is right. Marry me, Victoria Hale, and let me spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the trust you placed in me. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. You already are worthy, you impossible man. Yes, yes, I'll marry you. Someday when the time is right, I'll absolutely marry you. They stood in her kitchen, holding each other as the pasta grew cold on the table, and Ethan felt something fundamental shift inside him. The guilt he'd carried about moving on from Sarah, the fear that happiness was temporary and fragile, the belief that he would always be struggling alone. All of it fell away, replaced by certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The conversation about going public with their relationship happened the following week, during a late-night strategy session in Victoria's crisis center. They'd been discussing integration metrics from the Donovan merger when Victoria suddenly closed her laptop and turned to face Ethan. I'm going to tell the board about us at next month's meeting, she announced. I'm going to be transparent about our relationship, about my intention to continue employing you as chief of staff, and about the safeguards we've put in place to maintain professional boundaries. They can accept it, or they can object. But I'm done hiding. That's a risk, Ethan said carefully. Some of them might see it as inappropriate, a conflict of interest. Then they can raise their concerns and we'll address them. But Ethan, I've spent my entire career making decisions based on what was best for the company. This is the first time I'm making a decision based on what's best for me personally, and I refuse to apologize for it. Victoria's jaw set in the determined expression Ethan had learned meant her mind was made up. Besides, Nathan already knows. He figured it out months ago and told me he thought we were good for each other. If he's comfortable with it, the board should be too. The board meeting happened on a Tuesday afternoon in late autumn, almost a year after that fateful bus stop encounter. Victoria presented her quarterly report with her usual competence, detailing the successful merger integration, the company's strong financial performance, and the positive market response to their expanded operations. Then, at the end of her presentation, she made her announcement. Before we close today's meeting, I want to address a personal matter that has professional implications. Ethan Parker, my chief of staff, and I are in a committed relationship. We have been for several months. I'm disclosing this because transparency is important, and because I want to be clear that this relationship in no way compromises my professional judgment or his performance in his role. The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan, watching via video feed from his office, saw the board members exchange glances, their expressions ranging from surprise to disapproving to carefully neutral. Finally, Margaret Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen, but equally formidable in her own way, the board's longest-serving member, spoke up. Victoria, I appreciate your honesty. However, this does raise questions about favoritism, about whether Mr. Parker's position is merit-based or relationship-based. That's a fair question, Victoria acknowledged, which is why I've prepared documentation of Ethan's performance reviews, his contributions to major company initiatives, and feedback from colleagues across all departments. You'll find that his work has consistently exceeded expectations, and that his promotion to Chief of Staff was based entirely on merit. I've also implemented additional oversight measures. All decisions regarding Ethan's compensation or advancement now require board approval, removing any appearance of conflict of interest. Another board member, Thomas Reeves, raised his hand. What happens if the relationship ends? We've all seen workplace romances turn toxic. How do we protect the company from that risk? We have a written agreement. Ethan's voice came through the video feed, surprising everyone. Victoria had given him access to speak during this portion of the meeting. If our personal relationship ends for any reason, I've agreed to transition out of Hale Industries within 6 months, with appropriate severance and support for finding alternative employment. Neither of us would allow personal matters to damage the company. The discussion continued for another 30 minutes, board members raising concerns and Victoria addressing each one methodically. Finally, Margaret Chen called for a vote on whether to accept the relationship disclosure and the safeguards Victoria had proposed. The result was 11 in favor, 2 abstentions, and 0 against. Then it's settled, Margaret said. Victoria, the board appreciates your transparency and the professional manner in which you've handled this. Mr. Parker, we expect continued excellence in your role, and both of you try to keep the personal and professional separate as much as possible. That evening, Victoria and Ethan celebrated by taking Lily to her favorite restaurant, a casual Italian place where the waiters knew them by name and always brought extra breadsticks. Over spaghetti and meatballs, they explained to Lily that Daddy and Miss Victoria were officially together now, that people at work knew about it, and that this meant they could stop hiding how much they cared about each other. Does this mean Miss Victoria is going to be my new mom? Lily asked, her voice small and uncertain. Ethan and Victoria exchanged glances, both of them careful about how to navigate this conversation. No one will ever replace your mom, Ethan said gently. Your mom loved you so much, and that love doesn't go away just because she's not here anymore. But Miss Victoria loves you too, Lily said, looking between them. I do, Victoria confirmed. I love you very much, Lily, and I love your dad. That doesn't mean I'm trying to take your mom's place. It means I want to be part of your family, if you'll let me. A different kind of important person, not a replacement. Lily thought about this seriously, twirling spaghetti on her fork. Like how Mrs. Chen isn't my grandma, but she's still really important to us. Exactly like that, Ethan said, relieved that Lily had found her own framework for understanding. Miss Victoria is her own kind of special in our lives. Okay, Lily decided. That's good, because I like having you around, Miss Victoria. You make Daddy smile a lot, and you're teaching me to be really good at soccer, and you always remember which ice cream flavor is my favorite. Chocolate chip cookie dough, Victoria said with a smile. How could I forget? The seasons changed again, autumn giving way to winter. The Sterling case faded from the headlines, replaced by new scandals and stories. Hale Industries continued thriving, the merger with Donovan Technologies exceeding even the most optimistic projections. Ethan settled into his role as Chief of Staff, earning respect from colleagues who initially questioned whether he'd earned his position or simply benefited from his relationship with Victoria. Christmas arrived with a flurry of activity: Lily's school concert, company holiday parties, the traditional gift exchange with Mrs. Chen. Victoria had never really celebrated the holidays before, usually working through them while other people spent time with their families. But this year was different. She helped Ethan and Lily decorate their apartment, laughing as Lily insisted on putting every single ornament she'd ever made on their small tree. She came to Christmas morning breakfast in her pajamas, something she hadn't done since childhood. She watched Lily open presents with an expression of wonder that suggested she was experiencing the holiday through new eyes. Thank you for this, she told Ethan later that evening, after Lily had finally crashed from sugar and excitement. They sat on the couch, surrounded by wrapping paper debris and the warm glow of Christmas lights. for letting me be part of your family, for showing me what this is supposed to feel like. Thank you for choosing us, Ethan replied, for seeing something worth investing in when I was just a stranger at a bus stop. Best $18 I ever received, Victoria said with a smile, echoing the phrase that had become their private joke. Spring arrived with Lily's 9th birthday, which they celebrated with a soccer-themed party at the park where Victoria had first started coaching her. Lily's entire team came, along with friends from school, Mrs. Chen, and even Richard, who surprised everyone by being remarkably good at face painting. Victoria organized games and competitions, her competitive streak coming out as she refereed a scrimmage match between the kids. Watching her, Ethan felt overwhelmed with gratitude for how his life had transformed. 2 years ago, he'd been sitting at a bus stop with $18 and no hope. Now he had a career he was proud of, a daughter who was thriving, and a partner who'd shown him that second chances were real. As the party wound down and parents started collecting their children, Victoria pulled Ethan aside to a quiet corner of the park. I have something for Lily, she said, pulling a small wrapped box from her bag. But I wanted to check with you first before giving it to her. Ethan opened the box to find a delicate silver necklace with a small soccer ball charm, but there was something else too, a second charm in the shape of a heart with 3 small diamonds embedded in it. The soccer ball is self-explanatory, Victoria said, suddenly nervous in a way Ethan rarely saw her. But the heart charm, there are 3 diamonds, one for Lily, one for you, and one for me. I wanted her to have something that symbolizes that we're a family now, the 3 of us together. But if that's too much, if you think it's inappropriate, it's perfect, Ethan interrupted, his voice thick with emotion. She'll love it. We both do. They gave Lily the necklace after all the other guests had left, just the 3 of them sitting under the tree where Victoria had first taught Lily to juggle a soccer ball. Lily's eyes went wide when she saw it, and her fingers traced the 2 charms with reverent care. 3 diamonds, she whispered. One for each of us? One for each of us, Victoria confirmed. Because we're a family. Not a traditional family, maybe, but a real one. Lily threw her arms around Victoria, nearly knocking her over with the force of the hug. I love you, Miss Victoria. Can I maybe call you something else besides Miss Victoria? It feels too formal now. Victoria looked at Ethan, who nodded encouragement. What would you like to call me? Lily considered this carefully. My friend Emma calls her stepmom Mama Sarah, because her real mom is Mommy. So maybe I could call you something that's just ours? Not Mom, because that's for my mom who's in heaven. But something special? What about Vicky? Victoria suggested. That's what my dad used to call me when I was your age. Vicky, Lily tested the name, smiling. I like that. Hi, Vicky. Hi, Lily, Victoria said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Thank you for letting me be part of your family. Summer arrived with its lazy heat and long daylight hours. Lily's soccer team made it to the regional championships, and the entire family, including Mrs. Chen, who'd become an honorary grandmother, traveled to watch her play. Lily scored the winning goal in the final match, and the celebration afterward felt like a validation of everything they'd built together. It was on the drive home from that tournament, with Lily asleep in the back seat and the evening sun painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, that Ethan finally asked the question he'd been holding for months. Remember when I proposed to you in your kitchen? When I said someday, when the time was right? Victoria glanced at him, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I remember. What if the time is right now? Ethan pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. He'd been carrying it for 3 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. What if we stopped waiting for someday and made it today? Victoria pulled the car over to the side of the quiet highway, putting it in park before turning to face him fully. Ethan Parker, are you proposing to me on the side of the road with our daughter asleep in the back seat? I'm proposing to you in the place where our life is actually lived, not in some fancy restaurant or elaborate setup, but in the middle of an ordinary moment that's actually extraordinary because we're in it together. Ethan opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. I don't have a speech prepared. I don't have rose petals or champagne or anything impressive. I just have the absolute certainty that I want to spend the rest of my life with you, building this family, facing whatever challenges come our way, and being grateful every single day that you were at that bus stop when I was. Victoria's tears spilled over, running down her cheeks as she laughed. You're right, you don't have a speech prepared. That was terrible and perfect, and exactly what I needed to hear. Yes, Ethan, yes, I'll marry you. Not someday. Today, tomorrow, whenever you want. Just yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and they kissed while the sun set around them, and Lily continued sleeping peacefully in the back seat, unaware that her family had just become even more official. They told Lily the next morning over pancakes, watching her face light up with joy that mirrored their own. You're getting married? Like with a wedding and a cake and everything? Like with a wedding and a cake and everything, Victoria confirmed. What do you think about that? I think it's awesome. Can I help plan it? And can I wear a fancy dress? And can Mrs. Chen make dumplings for the reception because wedding food is usually boring, but dumplings are never boring? Yes to all of those things, Ethan said, laughing. This is your family too, Ladybug. You get input on how we celebrate it. The wedding planning became a family project, with Lily having opinions on everything from flowers to music to the font on the invitations. They decided on a simple ceremony in the same park where Victoria had coached Lily, where they'd celebrated birthdays and victories and ordinary Sunday afternoons. The guest list was small: close friends, family, key colleagues. Mrs. Chen was given a place of honor in the front row, and Richard served as Victoria's man of honor, his stoic face cracking into a genuine smile when she asked him. Nathan Donovan walked Victoria down the aisle, having become a friend and mentor to both of them over the past 2 years. Lily served as both flower girl and junior bridesmaid, taking her responsibilities with utmost seriousness. And when Ethan and Victoria exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising partnership and honesty and love through whatever challenges came, there wasn't a dry eye among the witnesses. I promise to always remember that you gave me everything you had when I needed it most, Victoria said, her voice steady despite her tears. I promise to honor that trust every day for the rest of our lives. I promise to keep choosing kindness, even when it's hard, Ethan replied. Because that choice brought me to you, and I will never stop being grateful for that. The reception was exactly what Lily had requested, elegant but unpretentious, with Mrs. Chen's dumplings alongside the catered food, and dancing that went late into the evening. Lily fell asleep on Victoria's shoulder during the last dance, and Ethan carried her to the car while his new wife walked beside him, her hand in his. Life settled into a new rhythm after the wedding. Victoria moved into a house they'd bought together. Not a mansion, but a comfortable family home with a yard where Lily could practice soccer and enough space for everyone to have their own room. Mrs. Chen moved into the guest house out back, insisting she was too old to live alone anymore and someone needed to keep them all organized. Ethan continued as chief of staff, his reputation in the business world growing as Hale Industries expanded its operations globally. Victoria remained CEO, but she'd learned to delegate more, to trust her team, to take weekends off to watch Lily's games and have family dinners. They navigated the challenges of blending their professional and personal lives with the same careful communication they'd built their relationship on. 3 years after their wedding, on a cold November evening, Ethan found himself standing at the same bus stop where he'd met Victoria. He'd come here alone, needing a moment to himself to process some difficult news. Mrs. Chen had passed away peacefully in her sleep the night before, and the loss felt enormous despite knowing she'd lived a long, full life. The bus stop looked the same as it had that night 5 years ago. The same flickering fluorescent lights, the same cracked pavement, the same electronic display showing arrival times. But Ethan was completely different. The desperate, defeated man who'd sat here with his last $18 was gone, replaced by someone who'd learned that sometimes the worst moments create space for the best transformations. I thought I might find you here, Victoria's voice came from behind him. She'd somehow known he'd need this, had somehow understood that he'd want to revisit the place where everything changed. I was just thinking about choices, Ethan said as she sat beside him on the bench, about how one decision can ripple out and change everything. If I hadn't given you that money, if I'd held on to it and used it to buy Lily a few more days of groceries, our lives would be completely different. Do you ever regret it? Victoria asked. Giving you the money? Never. Not for a single second. Ethan took her hand. I was thinking about Mrs. Chen, About what she told me the first time I brought Lily back to your office. She said you saw me, and I saw you. She was right." "She usually was," Victoria said softly. "She was wise in that way that comes from living fully and paying attention." They sat in silence for a while, watching buses come and go, passengers boarding and departing on journeys to unknown destinations. Somewhere in this city, Ethan thought, there were probably people sitting at bus stops with their last few dollars, wondering how they'd survive. The thought made him ache with empathy. "I want to do something," he said suddenly. In Mrs. Chen's memory, she spent her whole life helping people, teaching Lily Chinese, feeding neighbors who were struggling, creating community wherever she went. "I want to honor that." "What did you have in mind?" Victoria asked. "A foundation. Something that helps people who are in the position I was in 5 years ago, unemployed, desperate, one crisis away from complete catastrophe. Job training, emergency financial assistance, childcare support, whatever they need to get back on their feet." Ethan turned to face Victoria. "We have resources now. We have influence. We should use it to give other people the kind of second chance you gave me." Victoria smiled, the expression warm with pride and love. "The Parker Hale Foundation. I like the sound of that. Let's build it together." And they did. Over the next year, they established a foundation that combined Victoria's business acumen with Ethan's personal understanding of what people in crisis actually needed. They funded job training programs, provided emergency grants to single parents, supported childcare services for working families. They quietly paid off medical debts and prevented evictions and gave people the breathing room to rebuild their lives. The foundation's first major initiative was a partnership with local bus services to provide free fare cards to people experiencing financial hardship. Every card came with a small note. "Someone once helped a stranger at a bus stop. This is us paying that kindness forward. When you're able, help someone else." Lily, now 12 years old and a star player on her school's soccer team, volunteered at the foundation's events, her natural empathy making her wonderful at welcoming families who came seeking help. She'd inherited Ethan's instinct for kindness and Victoria's strategic thinking, and watching her interact with people, both parents felt certain she'd do something extraordinary with her life. "You know what's funny?" Lily said one evening as they cleaned up after a foundation fundraiser. "My teacher asked us to write about a hero in our lives, and I wrote about Daddy. Not because he's CEO or anything fancy, but because he gave away his last money to help someone who needed it. She said that was the most heroic thing she'd ever heard." "Your teacher's right," Victoria said, putting her arm around Lily. "True heroism isn't about grand gestures. It's about choosing to help even when it costs you something." "That's what you both do," Lily replied matter-of-factly. "You help people all the time. That's why I want to do it too when I grow up." Ethan met Victoria's eyes over Lily's head, and they shared a smile of absolute understanding. This right here was what $18 had ultimately bought. Not just their own happiness, but the ability to create ripples of kindness that would extend far beyond their own lives. On the 5th anniversary of that bus stop encounter, Ethan and Victoria returned to the spot one last time. It was raining, just like it had been that fateful November night, and the flickering lights cast the same erratic shadows. But this time, Ethan's pockets weren't empty. This time, he had everything he needed and more than he'd ever dared dream of. 5 years ago, I sat here thinking my life was over, he said, staring at the bench where he'd made the choice that changed everything. I had $18 and no idea how we'd survive. And now you have a family, a career, a purpose, and a foundation that's helped hundreds of people rebuild their lives, Victoria finished. All because you chose kindness over self-preservation. All because you were at this bus stop when I was, Ethan corrected. That's the part I can never get over. The sheer randomness of you being here, needing help at the exact moment I was able to give it. What are the odds? Maybe it wasn't random, Victoria suggested. Maybe some things are meant to happen exactly the way they do. A bus pulled up, its doors opening with a hydraulic hiss. An elderly woman got off, struggling with heavy grocery bags, and without hesitation, Ethan moved to help her. Here, let me get those for you, he said, taking the heaviest bags. Oh, thank you, dear, the woman said gratefully. These old arms aren't what they used to be. Ethan carried her groceries to her building 2 blocks away, Victoria walking beside him, And when the woman tried to offer him money for his help, he refused with a smile. "Someone helped me once when I really needed it," he said. "This is just me paying it forward. When you get a chance, help someone else." As they walked back toward their car, Victoria slipped her hand into his. "You know, I used to think success was about building the biggest company, making the most money, having the most power. But I was wrong. Success is this: having someone to walk through the rain with, having a daughter waiting at home who wants to change the world, having a foundation that helps people the way we were helped. That's the real measure of a life well lived." $18, Ethan mused. That's all it took to start this whole chain of events. $18 and a choice to care about a stranger. "Best investment either of us ever made," Victoria said, echoing their old joke. But this time, it wasn't really a joke. It was simply the truth. They drove home through the rain toward the warm house where Lily was probably doing homework with music playing too loud, where Mrs. Chen's presence still lingered in every corner despite her absence, where a life built on kindness and second chances and the radical choice to trust in possibility continued to unfold in ways neither of them could have predicted. 5 years ago, Ethan Parker had given away his last $18 to a stranger at a bus stop. And in return, he'd received everything that mattered: love, family, purpose, and the unshakable knowledge that sometimes the moments when we have the least to give are exactly the moments when giving matters most. The rain continued falling, washing the city clean, and somewhere in the night, another person sat at another bus stop, making choices that would ripple out into futures they couldn't yet imagine. And thanks to the Parker Hale Foundation, maybe, just maybe, some of those people would find the help they needed before desperation made their choices for them. That was the real happy ending, Ethan thought as they pulled into their driveway. Not that he'd found wealth or love or success, though he was grateful for all of those things. The real ending was that one act of kindness, one choice to help when it cost him everything, had created a legacy of generosity that would outlive them both. $18. A stranger in need. A choice made from the heart rather than the head. And from those simple elements, a life, no, multiple lives, transformed beyond recognition. As Ethan opened the door to his home, where light and laughter and love waited, he said a silent thank you to the universe for the randomness that had placed him at that bus stop on that particular night. And then he stepped inside, ready to live another day of the extraordinary life that had started with the simple decision to give away everything he had. Because in the end, that's what love required. That's what family demanded. That's what kindness cost. Everything you had, freely given, with no guarantee of return. And somehow, miraculously, when you gave everything, you received even more back. That was the lesson. That was the truth. That was the story of how Ethan Parker's last $18 became the foundation of everything that mattered. And it was enough, more than enough. It was everything.